Chair.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. We'll go ahead and get started. A copy of the Open Meetings Act is located on the north wall of the Legislative Chambers. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Also, please note that there is an automatic external defibrillator available on the back of the Legislative Chamber wall. We will begin with the agenda for the Douglas County Board of Equalization. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Boyle, Commissioner Duda, Commissioner Kraft,
Commissioner Morgan, Commissioner Rogers, Commissioner Tusha, Madam Chair.
Here, item A, approval of the minutes of the Board of Equalization meeting held Tuesday, July 29, 2014, and B, call for a meeting and set Tuesday, August 12, 2014, as a date for hearing on certified assessment corrections reflecting the addition of omitted property to the tax rolls or increased value of property.
Second.
Any questions or comments? Please vote.
Motion passes.
Next is citizen comments. Is there anyone in the chamber wishing to speak to the Board of Equalization about an item not on the agenda? Seeing none, we'll move to resolutions, items D through L.
Motion approved. And adjourn.
Madam Chair.
There's 9 items. I'm sorry, Commissioner Boyle.
I didn't know. I would like to hold out to item I.
Okay, so items D through L minus I, so a total of 8 items for the resolutions. Any questions or comments? Please vote.
Just a moment, please. And just for the record, Madam Chair, the second on that motion?
I second it.
Okay, thank you. Okay.
I think I got to vote twice. You got me down?
Commissioner Morgan? Motion passes.
And before we go to I, and since we are going to be talking about I, Tom or Kathleen, do you want to introduce our folks that are here today? These are individuals that made our Board of Equalization run smoothly, and so how would you like to introduce them to us?
Good morning, Commissioners. Kathleen Hall from the County Clerk's Office. We have with us today more than 4 employees that did that, to move the paper, to get everything entered. So from my right, it's Quentin Lovelace, who's been with us 5 years.
Wow.
Patty Riley, how many? 5 years.
Wow.
Pat Coder, this is his 3rd year, and Patty Jones, this is her 1st year. So
Well,
some
thank you
returning
very much.
veterans.
We appreciate
Yes.
all your hard work.
Did they get a pension vested or anything? Oh.
And thanks to you, Kathleen, and also our Catherine, there she is, kept the ball rolling, and here we are today on item I to set the final 2014 real property valuations for all residential and commercial real property protests. And we do have also our referees that are in the audience as well, so we thank you all again, and you've been with us for a number of years as well, so thank you. And so Commissioner Boyle, do you want to go ahead and start with the questions?
Well, I have yes, I would. Thank you, Madam Chair. There are 3 or 4 properties that I wanted to speak about, and 1 is residential, and 3 are commercial. And the 3rd one may be resolved. That's the target. But I wanted to talk about the property at 7117 Ames and 4405 North 72nd Street. So who's going to speak about commercial property? And this does involve a TIF, and I've alerted, I hope I've given everybody adequate notice, because it's my understanding, if you give your name and your address.
Chris Musto, 1011 South 78th Street, Omaha.
Thank you. The property is in a TIF. It was developed by Selden's. And I believe one of the companies, and someone can correct me, who knows better, I believe one of the buildings has been sold, and the owner has filed a request for a reduction in the valuation. And the other building is, I believe, occupied by a tenant. And it's somewhat complicated because the Selden Company wishes to maintain this valuation, which is higher, because it wants to take advantage of the TIF financing. So we've got some diametrically opposed positions on the valuation. Both of them seem pretty valid to me for valid reasons. And so I'm not sure where we should go with this, but I'd like to hear from someone who can clarify what ought to happen to TIF property, particularly when one is being occupied by a tenant and who wants a reduction, and also one who's owned by a building that wants a reduction. Can you help?
Well, I don't have...
Could you state your name first, please?
Chris Musto.
Thank you.
I don't have all the details because I was just given the addresses a couple days ago. I did pull some of the information, and from what I can recall, there were two properties in that Benson area development. One of them was a Dillon's ownership, which was, I believe, the Baker store. And I reviewed what we had done on that property, and I believe, as that is owner-occupied, they were asking for a rent or evaluation based upon a reduced rent. We didn't see, as in the referee, did not see sufficient evidence to support the lower rent. We dismissed that. So in that case, there was no change to the value.
Chris, could I interrupt you? I have both of them here, if that's of help. Is this of any help to you or not?
Well, I know there's a lot of pages there because I think there's.
Okay.
I'm certainly willing to look. I can.
That's all right.
I can specifically answer to anything.
Okay.
If you want me to reference the file, I'll be happy to
No,
go
that's
through
fine. I just would like to have some guidance.
So that's on the grocery store, and I don't recall what they were asking for in their model that they had developed. And this is the owner of the property, but based upon the information that I'm aware of, it seemed it wasn't supported to go to a rent of that level, so we didn't change the value. Now, on the other property, as I looked at it, it got a little more confusing because it was a property bought by CPM, is it CPM Benson, LLC?
Yes.
Okay. And I believe in 2007 that was a purchase that included multiple properties, including the one that was being protested. Now, in that case, it was an owner of the property provided a copy of rent rolls, operating expenses, history of that nature. Now, the referee, when they looked at that, what we did was we looked at the rent that the assessor had in on their model on that particular building and looked at the actual rent roll of how they were able to sign leases over the last few years, assuming that these are negotiated to be market. I mean, they weren't between related parties or the owner of the property. And it seemed that it made sense to reduce the model market rent by several dollars, which was what was done to reduce the valuation. Now the estimated vacancy and collection loss, the expenses used, and the overall capitalization rate was retained that was used in the assessor's model.
Okay. So we have competing positions, don't we, between the interest of the Selden Company and the TIF and the owner and the tenant?
We do, and that was one of the properties where we had two filings on it. The other filing was by the Selden Company, the attorney, and it was a rather lengthy paragraph that basically stated that we hold the TIF note on this property. We want to retain our right to appeal this should a valuation change be made. And as I understand it, they've basically kept it open for their opportunity to file at Turk. And although I don't know for sure, my guess is that whether we do not change it or we do change it, the party that didn't get their position is going to file with Turk.
Sure.
This property also is, I believe, ongoing in the Turk process for several earlier years of valuation, but I can't confirm that. Now, I've seen the TIF document, which is lengthy. I do believe we looked at it. In some of the TIF documents, there will be written a number that says we wouldn't want to, the valuation can't be reduced this certain number. I didn't find it in there, if there is one, and it doesn't mean that there is one in every TIF document, because each one is unique to their property.
Well, and again, I don't know whether it's in there either. I didn't have the TIF document at my disposal either, but the philosophy, and again, maybe this is something that Mr. Goodwillie would address, but certainly you're familiar with it, but it seems that the philosophy of tax increment financing, TIF, is that it encourages development, and it offers developers some guarantees that their investment will be stable for a period of time. They do have to agree with all the governments. I guess the city primarily, they're the ones who do these TIFs on our behalf, and when all the other governmental bodies. That freezes the property taxes. That they have to guarantee the person applying for the TIF has to guarantee that the governmental bodies that they will not ask for a reduction in valuation below a certain threshold. Well, the amount here is something around, I think, just under $1 million, I believe. Maybe I'm way off whack on that figure, but what's happened is, of course, the people who got the TIF, the Selden Company, need that revenue, which is generated by the property taxes through the TIF mechanism, to continue to pay for the improvements that they promised they would make under a contract. And then they have some of the people who are on the property who are saying, we don't want our valuations that high, which is destroys their guarantee. So my initial thought is that this board should grant the application of the Selden Company maintaining the TIF, because that's what their contract is with the governmental bodies, primarily the city. They're the ones who issue TIFs. And then the other parties will have to do what they have to do. I think that is the most reasonable approach.
Now your comment that the value would be set and unchanged is not fully correct here.
Okay.
Because the property was valued at about $885,000, and of course that's just the excess. That doesn't include the
Right.
base, which is the base is what never can be changed or moved, which in this case would be the land valuation. No. This property had a valuation increase to $1.2 million and some change. Now, that's what opened that up, is to looking at it, because the rent that was used didn't support that. Now, and this might have gone a little bit outside the scope of looking at this, but I went ahead and took all the properties that were purchased for that $2.7 million, that included this parcel as one of them, and thought, well, did they protest these other parcels? They did not protest the other parcels. And when I then took them all together and looked at them where they had been previously assessed in 2000, or the purchase in 2007, and where this adjustment, it was an adjustment downward, but it was in the neighborhood of 5% of the total package, which is fairly it's reasonable in my mind anyway.
So your recommendation is to reduce whose valuation by 5%? The TIF people?
Well, that particular property, because other pieces of that component of that total purchase of the multiple properties, that's what that looked at. It's actually a larger percentage, you're correct, on the property itself, but it was one that was assessed at I can't remember exactly, $885,000. That was then increased for 2014 to $1,200,000, I can't remember, $65,000. And then I believe, based upon looking at the rent roll for the property, which is actual operations and expenses that were provided, is where we looked at the assessor model used, and I believe the model they may have used is $14 a square foot on the rent, and I believe we may have reduced that rent to, Again, I'm trying to remember all these things, but maybe $12.50.
Commissioner Boyle, would you take a comment from
Oh,
Commissioner
absolutely.
Morgan?
Well, and I just want to be sure we're all kind of understanding it. So what's happened is, I think, a tenant requested a reduction in the property taxes because the tenants are paying the CAM, basically, the property taxes, et cetera.
In this case, the owner of the property requested the reduction. This is not a tenant. They provided the tenant rent roll and operating expenses for the property.
Oh, okay.
But the property, now I don't know, was it that Selden that owned these multiple buildings when they put the entire development together and then turned around and sold these buildings in 2007 to this buyer who now owns the property, but you're right, has multiple tenants in there, and I'm sure they're hearing it from their tenants because I'm sure it's a triple net. Well, I'm not
Right.
sure. It's possibly a triple net, and the tenant would have seen an increase in their taxes, assuming the mill rate stayed similar, of 30 or 40%.
The owner's not here, I'm assuming, today?
I don't believe so. You'd have to. I didn't ask them to appear.
But they requested the reduction, so it was your recommendation, after careful review of all the income and so on, to reduce the value.
Supported through market evidence that.
And was it supported beyond the market? In other words, if they have a lease that's above market, hey, did you go by that? Or is the lease what you used?
We looked at the rent roll and we looked at all the leases which had a range of rents, as you would expect at most properties, because you've got your end caps, you've got your inline spaces,
Right.
You've got the size of the spaces and the different things that might impact that lease amount, the date, the term. We looked at those and utilized those against what we would think were market rents for that property if you would put that rent on it January 1, 2014.
Yeah, and of course, though, I always think that, hey, if they've got this much rent coming in for the next 5 years, even though the market's less, unless they're passing it on to the tenants in the early years before their lease expires, it seems like, we should go by what they really are paying at this time, not what the market is.
I believe then you're talking about a leased fee analysis. In that case, if we actually used their
Current.
true lease amount on this property and where their vacancy, the valuation would have come up substantially lower, depending, again, if you use the assessor model and don't impute a new capitalization rate. So the valuation, and again, I'm going by memory here, but I believe the assessor model, everything was used there except the change in the rent. The taxpayer representative for this property was asking for a valuation around $600,000, which would have been half of what the current assessed value had been moved up. That was not the number that we put on it. We did an analysis of the data provided to reflect the market and provide that valuation for equalization purposes and valuation purposes.
Commissioner Boyle, did you have anything additional?
Well, there are other people that I alerted that I wanted to contribute to this discussion. And so I'd like to ask Catherine, first of all, Catherine Hall, to our Board of Equalization leader, to give her any thoughts she may have on this, anything that you have to say about what happened or what is happening? Or do you think that's...
I don't believe I have anything additional to contribute.
Okay. Just wanted to give you the chance.
Thank you.
And then I did want to ask Teresa, to our legal counsel, if she has any thoughts. I did alert her, I believe, through Catherine, that there may be some questions. Ms. Urich, do you have any questions or comments?
I do not, Commissioner.
Okay. then I guess I'm really in the boat by myself.
I think some others want to talk.
Oh, yeah.
What cap rate did you use?
I don't have it in front of me. I'd have to take a look. If you want me to go reference the materials that I brought with me, or...
Okay. Well, while they're maybe talking, I guess Roger and...
Can I ask a
Mr.
question?
Goodwin.
When Commissioner Boyle
Yes, I don't
brought
want to
up-
run this. That's
No,
fine.
you brought up, or maybe you did, Chris, that there were actually 2 protests filed on this property.
I think there are 3.
Oh, there's 3
Aren't
protests?
there 3?
I only saw 2 that I recall, but if there could be a third one
Okay,
snuck
so
in there
there's
somewhere.
2, but we have, so this is kind of interesting, because I don't ever remember having that before.
They're on separate pieces of the...
Pieces of the, oh, okay.
No, they're on the same piece.
Well, Selden has the whole thing, but isn't it the grocery store is owned and the other one is a tenant? Isn't that it?
Well,
No?
no, they're not, these parcels are protested. One parcel number actually has been protested by the owner of the property and by Selden Company as holding an interest by holding the TIF note on the property. And we did ask Kathleen to get us an answer from the county legal department, which indicated to us, at least at this point in time, we need to consider both sets of information, and we did that.
Okay, thank you.
But we're considering them together, not separately, because it's the same property, right?
Well, when you say...
Absolutely.
Okay.
When you say the same property, what do you mean? Not the same building?
Yes,
Same building?
yes.
Okay, now, is that the one that was sold, the building that was sold, or the one that has a tenant?
They've both been sold.
Oh, they have? I
Oh,
thought-
everything's been sold. Nothing is owned by Selden. The TIF note is owned by Selden. Selden doesn't own any of these properties.
Okay, I thought they owned one that had a tenant, so...
There could be another one, but that's not anything that you brought up in your, in these particular parcel numbers at
Okay.
this point in time anyway.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Roger, Mike?
Commissioner Roger Morrissey, County Assessor. Let me see if I can clarify what we have here. There were 3 properties that Selden DBA 72nd LLC sold to a CBM LLC. The Selden Company, having interest in the TIF notes on these 3 parcels, filed on all 3 to maintain the value. The middle parcel, which I believe, Commissioner Boyle, you said was 17 Ames Street.
Let's see.
The current owner filed a protest on that property,
The middle property.
the middle property. There are 2 retail buildings, and I believe the third one, our record shows the third one's a restaurant. The middle building is the larger of the 2 retail buildings. The smaller one sits on 72nd Street there. So the middle property was protested. They purchased these 3 properties for, our records show, $2.8 million. We reappraised all that area out there and raised the values. All 3 of those properties had a raise in assessed value. The current owner protested only that middle property, which is the larger of the 2 retail buildings. And that is still under a TIF.
I'm sorry?
That is still a TIF.
Right.
And I brought my TIF smarts
Yes.
here with me to address any questions on the TIF, but I believe he will say that the courts and the powers that be have said they have an interest in the property, so
Right.
they can also protest.
Right.
So Selden Company protested to maintain the level of 1.2 million. Here again, I have not gone into a lot of detail on this either, and seen all the data that the owner has supplied the referee. So I have not seen that documentation.
Excuse me, when you say owner, who's the owner?
The owner is
CPM or somebody?
CPM Benson LLC.
They own the grocery store there?
I don't know where the grocery store came.
Okay.
I'm talking 2 retail buildings.
Okay.
One has like a Subway, but and then some other shops in the building, mixed use.
Right.
And then there's one that's being protested is twice as big as that one.
Okay.
And then on the corner, our record shows it as a restaurant.
Okay.
And that third property is 7051 Ames Street. That's not protested by both parties. So first of all, the only issue we have is that middle property that the assessment was raised to 1.2 million, and the referees felt that was too high looking at leases. I have not looked at the leases. I would assume that those lease rates are triple net.
They are, I'm sure.
And I'm not too sure that we didn't use gross. So, we're kind of mixing apples and oranges if you're looking at our model. So, here again, our opinion differs from the referee's opinion. And if you got a third party in here, maybe we'd have a third number too, but that's our opinion.
When you say your value differs,
What did they buy it for exactly? They bought all 3 together?
They bought all 3 for $2.8 million.
Okay, and what do we currently, and when did they buy it? If you don't mind, roughly the year?
Sure, I've got the transfer statement, if I can read. Looks like 2007.
2007.
And they assumed a $1.9 million mortgage at 5.56%.
Okay, so they bought it in '07, which was the peak of the market, just for all of us to remember, because in '08, real estate values went down. Okay, so they bought it then. And what have the referees, which
This
don't
is
agree...
3 properties now.
Yeah,
that they-
all 3.
Right.
What did the referees recommend reducing the 3 properties for if you combined them? What would be the value?
I don't have that. Evidently, you were passing that around. Did you have the...
actually, Roger, I think here's,
Okay.
show you what.
Chris can help.
Yeah.
I don't have that with me.
If you want to reference this would be this is what it was reduced, that was the only number reduced. This was last year's valuation. And so I was just going between this one and this one. It's 95% of.
While they're looking, Commissioner Boyle, it's good you're bringing this up to have discussion
This was the new valuation.
publicly and for people to know what we
I
are
might,
doing,
I
are
might,
trying to
in
do.
response to you, I'm glad you're on this board asking the questions you are. Needless to say.
That may change next week. That you won't be as glad. No.
That happens.
Base, excess, excess, base, excess.
So this is the assessed value, total assessed.
Total assessed if the reduction is granted.
Okay.
No, this would be the total if the reduction is not granted. Is that fair enough?
Oh,
I'm not asking about fair,
Yeah.
but is that clear enough for you?
Is the day, Therese, the day we have to decide on this?
Probably.
I think so.
Commissioner?
Mike Goodwillie, Douglas County Assessor. It's my understanding that when a county board extends the time, they've got to decide by August. I think August 10th, I think, is the magic date. I don't have the statute in front of me, so I don't know that you have the option to lay it over to the 12th.
Okay, I just wanted to ask that while you were looking.
You can ask Teresa, but it looked like she was flipping through something, and
And nodding my head, yes.
Oh, all right, well.
So what are the three, you think?
Well, what Chris provided me is, now he's going on all three properties.
Right, I wanted to just hear, because they bought all three for 2.807.
Right. And so our new value is
you say ours?
2.79 million.
How much?
The assessment.
2.79 million, base and excess.
2.79.
Right.
Okay.
And the new value, here again, we're throwing in
Three properties, I understand.
three properties and only
Right.
one's being protested.
Right.
So
But if you...
2.33 is the new number for all three.
That's from the referee?
That's the referee.
So what would happen is if I bought the property just for whatever reasons, I bought it for 2.8 roughly in '07. It's now 2014, and I take my three properties I bought all together at one time. Today I'm going to be paying taxes on $2.3 million because that's what it's assessed for.
With the change.
So what you have is roughly $370,000 reduction from what they paid. The owner's asking for that maybe because of market conditions or his rent. And that's what the referee basically looked at the triple net rents, and I'm pretty sure that's how you did it. Am I correct?
Correct.
Okay, so you look at the triple nets, and he determined evidently that, hey, it looks like these three parcels would be at the 330, and what I think Selden would be asking is, hey, leave them where they are, especially that middle property, because the other two aren't protests. I got that. That would bring it up to what, over $3 million, wouldn't it?
No.
That would be the 2.
Or would it just be at that 2,790?
Yeah.
So what we're talking about today is either leaving it at the 2,790,000 or
But still, we got three parcels, and
Yeah.
we're only talking about that middle parcel.
have the other two been reduced at all?
No. The other two, and I don't have those numbers, hold on, let's see what, no, the other two were left alone. They weren't protested, so they were left the same, but they
there's-
were raised
They were raised when?
this year also.
And
So
they
we
were-
raised the other two parcels,
And they're part of TIF.
and they're part of TIF.
So you raised two of them right on
We
either
raised
side.
three of them. We raised all three.
And then one of them protested and got a reduction.
Right.
One of them is protested and got a reduction. Yes, sir. That's what I'm saying. It's a difficult decision.
It's very, and what's, just, if this is in order, Mike, I don't want
It's
to
not,
do something. I just wonder, and you said we don't agree, what's your recommendation to this board? You
Well,
two are the,
You know, we have ours, and I haven't seen the leases and seen what the referee has.
but your
Either
people have
way,
seen it.
I guarantee you, either way, it's going to go to Turk.
sure.
One of the parties is going to appeal. It's going to file the $25 and say, I disagree, and it's going to be carried up to the state level.
Commissioner Boyle?
And it's going to be continued. And in this board, we will be defending this board's decision.
So what if this board just said to you today, you know what? We think leave things as the referees have recommended, and now it goes to Turk. Somebody's going to go to Turk, and they're going to make that decision. And if we did decide to do something, they're still going to go to Turk.
The problem that I have, we're talking about one part of it, and the other part of it is that there is a big agreement in here, TIF agreement, that was signed by the developer and gets very gets into real minutia about what happens about everything under the sun, including the property taxes. I mean, the people who developed this corner, I mean, they had to, it's my understanding, had to rebuild the intersection of 72nd and Military. That was part of the deal. It was not cheap, and that's part of the TIF. And they used the TIF to pay for those public improvements. And I think it's a question of fairness when a company, a developer, and I'm not usually a person who defends developers necessarily, but when a developer goes in and makes a contract with the city of Omaha, who handles the TIF program on behalf of all the governmental bodies, and the city says, this is what you have to do to make this thing happen, and they reach an agreement and they sign, they agree not to protest their taxes below a certain level and all that sort of thing, and then someone who's in the TIF pulls the rug out from under them and gets a lower valuation, which affects the income they have to pay for these improvements they were forced to do to build the project. I think it's, I think who ought to be going to TIF is the person, the little shop or whoever it was, the people who got individual reductions should be there, not the developer. I think it's bad faith, I think, for us to be throwing this developer under the bus. They agreed to do improvements there, and now we're taking away the mechanism to pay for them, I think.
And Commissioner, you keep looking at me on that. Remember, my number's 1-2, and
yeah.
so.
Well, that's my feeling, and I don't even know what this is such a, for me, pretty complicated. I don't even know what the recommendation is. I mean, so it'd be hard to make a motion to say, this is what we ought to be doing for somebody, or this is the valuation we ought to be setting for this piece out of those three, or I just am at a loss at how that should be handled to treat everybody fairly.
Commissioner Boyle, I think.
Hang on a minute. I have a question, because we do have, the only piece of the property that we're talking about, the other two were raised. This one was and they're not even protested. So this piece is the one in question, and the only place that it got a little bit mucky is when we brought in all three of the properties to determine the rate. You guys didn't do that. You just used the one, right? The one that protested.
We did a packet on all three. Roger Morrissey again. All three were protested, but the owner protested and said, leave it alone. We agree with the assessor's number on all three.
Okay.
And then the middle one, the owner now, who the developer had sold the properties to, said, we're not protesting these two, well, I assume,
right,
by not
right,
sending in any evidence, but we want to protest the bigger property, the middle property, and we think it's too high.
Okay. So Commissioner Boyle?
Well, I think maybe the motion then is to get figures from you about what those three properties, what your recommendation is, that would not agree with, at least with one. I guess the only one that filed a protest. Yours is higher than the referees. But I think the proper motion would probably be to support the assessor's valuation on those properties, and let those people, whoever, any one or just one or more, do their thing in Turk, and have the developer, I think, be treated fairly, to tell you the truth.
Mike?
Mike Goodwillie, Douglas County Assessor's Office. Let me try and provide a little background for TIF that may or may not make your job easier on this. The first is, there is nothing in the community redevelopment law that governs TIFs that trumps the requirement that property be valued at its actual or market value. Okay, there is nothing in the TIF statutes that says just because you have an agreement not to protest with the city, that if the actual value of the property comes down below a certain point, that the assessor's office or the county board can't reduce the value to whatever actual or market value is. There's no requirement there. Now, second, with respect to the agreements, yeah, my understanding is the city signs agreements with the developers of TIF where the developer promises not to protest down below a certain point. People can waive their rights all the time, but it doesn't change the obligation the assessor's office has, and then in turn the referee's office, in response to protests, and your duty to value the property at market value. What has happened here, and it's not uncommon, is once that developer sells that property to that third party, in this case CPM, CPM was not a signatory to any kind of a non-protest agreement with the city or anybody else. Now, I don't know if someplace in the purchase agreement between Selden and CPM, whether that same "I promise not to protest" language was included. But clearly, if it was not, that new owner is not in the least bit bound by the agreement that a developer sold with the city. And even if they had an agreement with the developer, I'm not sure it isn't the job of the two private parties to the agreement to worry about how to enforce that. I don't think that agreement supersedes the statutory obligation to value a property at its market value. So I don't think that those clauses in agreements prevent the county from valuing a property at its actual or market value. So the agreement stuff is very nice and fine. I'm not sure it obligates anybody in this room today.
Commissioner Morgan?
Let me ask you, Mr. Goodwin, I appreciate your comments. Did the owner protest that one property with the assessor's office before it got to the referee?
Oh.
What do you mean? Did they have a preliminary hearing or anything?
Did they come to you and say, hey, we think this building here, this one building out of the three should be reduced?
I don't know. They may have
That'd
just...
be good to know, because what I'm thinking, Mike, then, if they left it the way it was and then the referee stepped in, it helps us with our decision. I'm just wondering, usually, you know, they might come talk to you, show you the information, they don't get what they'd like from you, then they go to the referee. Isn't that correct?
There is the mechanism starting this year for that preliminary hearing in February. Whether these folks availed themselves of that or not, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't remember that they did.
So they didn't come talk to you and show you, hey, here's why this should be reduced or something, which is what I've done in past years.
Yeah, I don't remember that they have. And
Okay.
I didn't see in the notes that they did.
That's
Now,
kind of
that's not to
interesting.
say that somebody didn't put the note in.
Well,
Go ahead, Commissioner.
I spoke to the Seldons, and they didn't come to see you. I don't know if they didn't have a conference either, I don't believe. But what it gets down to the bottom line to me, I mean, it kind of knocks the socks off to think that this TIF agreement really turns into kind of a worthless piece of paper as to the obligations between the parties, the city, and on behalf of these governmental bodies and the developer. It just, to me, it shakes me that this sort of thing, you know, in my view, maybe it's not quite accurate, but it seems to me like it's not right, it's not fair to the developer. But on the other hand, the building was sold, and that person has a right to challenge the valuation, so it takes the developer out of it, except I think the developer is on the hook to complete payments on this. So I mean, maybe it's something that they should have handled, I don't know. What is your recommendation?
Well, at this point, without seeing that documentation, my recommendation would be to keep the value that we have on it.
And what is the valuation?
I don't have that in front of me.
Well,
The total of the three would be that $2,790,000.
And this is only a documentation I have handed. First of all, you're looking at the one property.
Right.
And if Chris's numbers are correct, and I assume they are, then the base is $1,215,200. I'm sorry, that's the excess.
right.
And the base would be $16,700.
Where is that coming from, Roger?
Chris handed me a sheet on what he put together, what our numbers were and what he lowered. Oh, okay.
Can
Thanks,
you
Chris.
put
I
those
don't
on
know.
the screen? Just put them on the screen, Roger. Not that we'll all be able to see. Maybe.
Oh, I see what that is.
Okay.
This would be the excess on that property, $1,215,200.
That would be the total of what it's assessed for the middle property.
That would be the excess. The base value is $16,700.
For the TIF.
Two
Oh, I see.
values on every tip.
Right,
Yeah.
Right.
This is the base.
right. And that didn't change.
So adding these two numbers together is our value on this property. But there are two parcel numbers
Right.
also.
Yeah, that's
So
another.
those are the two numbers, Commissioner, in answer to your question on what.
And what did they reduce it to?
And it was reduced to, and here again, I'm using Chris's numbers.
I think it's,
$759,500.
yeah.
Yep.
So roughly
That's the referee's recommendation.
500,000 reduction.
And Roger, your position is to stick with 1.2, was that what
Right.
you're saying?
Yes,
Stick
sir.
with that?
At this point, without seeing, in all fairness, without seeing the leases and
Okay.
other documentation, and they didn't come in, to my knowledge, and provide our office with anything. And we meet regularly with people all year round, and then we've got the opportunity in February for people to come in and discuss.
Yeah, that's why I asked you that, if
Right.
you had that review and they showed you the leases.
I don't remember that they did.
Okay.
Well, that will be, when we make a vote on this, that'll be my recommendation that we follow what the assessor has, at $1,250,200 on this piece. There's another property, Roger, that's in this package, and Michael. It's 4405 North 72nd. That's, I believe, that's Benson Park Plaza, same facility, this is out of Cincinnati. And this is
4405, I'm sorry?
4405 North 72nd Street. And again, I've got this here if this is any help to you. And that's the valuation, I guess, oh, wait a minute, I guess it's not changed. It's $3,439,100, and that's what was recommended apparently by the referee. So I don't know why this ended up as a...
It stayed the same, no
I
reduction.
guess it did, yeah, I guess it did.
And I may ask you a couple questions before you get to leave, but go ahead, Mike.
No, I think that's it. I'm going to recommend I recommend that 1.2 million on that first property we discussed.
Okay, so
We could do that.
we can do that, and then we'll add it back in when we vote on the whole. So is there a motion and a second?
I'll second Mike.
I mean, is there already?
Yes.
Can I just say,
Uh-huh.
I think the easiest way to do this is to say, for this particular property, you want to stick with the original
Assessors.
value and dismiss
The
the
referee's
protests.
recommendation.
Dismiss the yeah.
Okay.
Just excuse me, to keep the original value on that parcel number.
Okay.
So that's the key, is the parcel number. That's
Right.
what we would like
Okay.
for you to give, and it's there on your sheets that you have.
But in terms of process, we already have a motion and a second?
No, there's no
We don't
motion or
have a
second
motion
at
and a
all.
second.
He'll, go ahead.
I'll make the motion. Now, let me ask, am I making the motion just on this, or do you want me for the whole
No.
thing?
No, we
Just
can
this.
do two things. We can make it on the whole thing and add these as friendly amendments if everyone is okay with that, or we can pull these out separate.
I think we should
Pull
pull
them
this
out
out
separate?
and do
I
the
do.
Okay.
dismiss.
All right, so we're going to take them
I'll make-
separate.
I'll
So
take-
you're making the motion that we're pulling this one out of the
Right.
bunch, and the motion is to leave that parcel at the original value.
And for the record, can I please get the parcel number?
In front of me, it's 06365-40122.
Thank you.
And
Yes.
is there a second?
I second.
Commissioner Duda?
I'm not clear on why this property is getting so much attention. We have hundreds of protests, and we seem to be picking one property out, spending an hour talking about it, and then saying we're going to ignore our referee's recommendation. I don't assume that I know more than the referee, and I haven't heard a compelling reason not to go along with his recommendation on this property. And frankly, the whole process makes me a little uneasy that we are so focused on one property, and I don't know why. I'm not sure what distinguishes this property to warrant so much of our attention and to ignore the referee's recommendation. I'm not comfortable going along with that. Thank you.
Commissioner Boyle?
Well, it's not unlike Mr. Labai that came to our podium last week who brought up this property. That is one that I'm bringing up next on St. Mary's Avenue. I don't view the the recommendations from the referees as something that we just say, we'll take it, whatever you say. I think we have a responsibility to look at when we're asked, and I was contacted and said this doesn't look right to us and it affects our TIF, and so I said I'll bring it up. So that's why I went to the work and tried to notify people of what was coming, so there was no surprises hopefully, and to have a discussion. We're not really pulling this out of the air. This is what the assessor recommended, and some time ago with my frustration with the Board of Equalization, I asked the county attorney about who has the responsibility under state law to set valuations of property, and the answer was pretty simple: county assessor. Which at that point I said, then I think it's time we abolish the Board of Equalization, because this is, if we're not supposed to equalize these valuations when they come, then what are we doing? Just rubber stamping whatever appears in front of us? We are very fortunate to have the competent referees that we have, but we also have competent staff on the assessor side, and they're telling us that it ought to be this value. The referee says a different figure. I think it's the assessor that we ought to be going with.
Commissioner Duda?
I know what you mean, Claire. It is pulling something out of all of these, thousands of things that took place. I have some other things to talk about after I get through with this, I'm sorry to say. But, so that would be my motion.
Okay. Commissioner Rogers?
So this is the year you were supposed to do the initial meetings with the commercial people, right?
We do it with everybody, Commissioner.
So, I mean, I'm just curious, what did you all come at the beginning when you did the initial meetings?
There was new legislation that went into effect this year that the assessor put the values out on the website,
right,
or notify property owners of any changes. We've notified by putting the values out on the website and gave them the opportunity to meet with us face-to-face during the month of February. During that time period, they could also submit leases, comparables, all kinds of documentation that they felt would support a lower value. And those that came in with documentation that we felt were realistic, we did lower those values before the numbers went to the state. So in essence, we made a lot of changes that did not come before this board because of that extra step that was thrown in. Was that?
So is this one?
Pardon me?
What did you all come to with this? I'm saying, when the initial meeting, did you all have an initial meeting with them with this?
They don't remember.
No.
Oh, no, I don't remember, and that was the question that I think Commissioner Morgan had. Have we met with these people? And I don't remember that we have.
See, Chris, I think it'd be a lot easier decision if the assessor had seen all this information and they too recommended, hey, a reduction of this amount, the referee thought more, then we'd have something that we'd base on. And that's why I tend to think, hey, if they want to go to Turkin, then they settle it there. But I wish they had come to the assessor's office so they would have reviewed all of the leases, et cetera.
Correct me if I'm wrong, though, is during the process, the representative from the assessor's office is there like it used to be when we did it, right?
Right.
So, I mean, you saw the information, not you, but your office saw the information when the person or the owner brought it to the referees? No? No, okay.
Well,
No.
Commissioner, Mike Goodwillie, Douglas County Assessor's Office, the taxpayer has to step forward and avail themselves of that remedy in February. And to the best of our knowledge, this taxpayer didn't contact us and didn't meet with us in February.
But during the protest time then, so they didn't meet in February.
Right.
They came in, they only met with the referee, nobody from your office?
Exactly.
Oh. Commissioner Boyle?
Well, I'm curious, do you notify all these companies, or are they just supposed to be doing this themselves? I mean, you don't send them out letters and say, come on in during the month of June and July?
Yeah, we do send a notice at the end of May that there's been a value change.
Okay.
And that here's the steps that you go through for protest. And when they receive that notification in May, after it's been through the state level review of our numbers, then they're notified this is the process to follow up.
Okay.
We typically do not see anybody in between there. It's happened, though, where the property owners come in and says, hey, I just went down and protested. Here's my data, and it's left it with us. And the referee and the assessor's office might concur, but that's the referee's decision. And we might say that makes sense,
So they had a chance to come in, they were notified, and they just didn't come down. They saw the increase, and I thought, man, it seems okay to me.
But they went to the referee, Commissioner. Did they meet with you face-to-face, Chris?
I believe on
Chris, can you come to the podium? Chris, can you come down to the podium, please? Uh-huh.
So,
I put you on the spot, I'm sorry.
That's okay. Chris must know. I know we had over 700 commercial protests, and we had several hundred face-to-face. I'm trying to recall, but I do believe a representative for the property owner in this case did have a face-to-face and went over the information that they provided, being the rent roll and the operating expenses. As far as the representative for the Selden Company, I know they had an attorney that was in there and met on several of them, but not necessarily on all of them. And I would have to pull Commissioner Boyle may have it on there on the front of that sheet if it is ticked as to whether or not they requested a face-to-face interview. And
I'd be glad to let you look. I don't know where to look.
Okay, excuse me.
I think it's okay. You can keep them like heavy.
Okay, it appears that Sean James on the 4405 North 72nd property protested this based on valuation and did not meet with the county assessor on this parcel. And I cannot tell from here whether they had a face-to-face interview. Now, this would be the same parcel for CPM Benson. Now, there's a lot of paperwork here. And yeah, I believe the representative for the owner of the property was Rich Green, and I'm trying to look for his front page that might reference.
So I guess it really doesn't matter, really. I mean, if they didn't come in February, then they sent in the protest and the referee looked at it, they have the option as to whether or not they want a face-to-face or not. But the information was given to our referees, who are us, sitting as us, really, because we don't do it anymore, so they're taking our place. We got the additional information and came up with the value.
This here in the protest packet from the owner is a CPM Benson LLC operating statement and the CPM Benson LLC rent roll information that was submitted by the property owner that the assessor's office did not have available to them.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Rogers?
So, can I step back a couple to your point, PJ? I'm lost in, because I was always under the impression that there was supposed to be this kind of wall between the assessor's office and the Board of Equalization, which is us. And am I wrong in that? Okay, so this whole process of they didn't choose to go to Roger, then they came to you all. I mean, I'm just thinking, I guess I'm just wondering, why do you have two separate organizations if the wall doesn't exist, technically?
Well, I do, Commissioner, I do believe the wall does exist because the assessor's office sets the valuation, and I don't want to misspeak because I'm not part of the assessor's office, but I understand that the property owners have an opportunity to come in and meet with the assessor's office, providing them information that they feel supports their reduction in value or not. In that case, the assessor takes that into consideration and then can contact that property owner as to whether or not they made an adjustment, or if they did, what sort of adjustment. And then if they're unhappy with the actual adjustment that may or may not have taken place, they may then continue to file with the Board of Equalization where they meet with the referee. Now backing off on this a little bit, if you recall in previous years, a lot of the recommendations that we would have at the end, a lot of them would say assessor recommendation. And that was before the assessor was allowed to meet and actually change the value. They were allowed to meet with these property owners, which provided them information. They said, we think that the number should be changed to this, and then often we would get the protest information by the property owner that says, we're requesting the value that the recommended by the assessor's office, and therefore it was just additional paperwork for us. We'd look over the information, assessor and property owner both agree on the new number. We would put that number down and say assessor recommendation. We didn't have many of those this year because they had come to terms with each other prior to coming to the Board of Equalization. Now, it wasn't required that they meet with the assessor's office either, and so some people just said, hey, I'm not going to meet with the assessor's office, I'm going to go straight to the Board of Equalization. But
so, and like I said, I mean, so help me understand this. I understand this, but this just gets kind of crazy to me. Help me understand the subjective science of assessing, because if at the beginning, if they meet with Roger and they go through the same process, and somehow they meet with you all at a later point, and I'm assuming you all's office use the professional credentialing of whatever assessor needs to have, what value would come up different when they meet with Roger that would be different than when they meet with you all if they're given the same assessment? And, I didn't plan to say anything on this, but somehow this is seeming repetitive because I'm not understanding the subjectiveness of assessing. What if a person would have came in and met with Roger, came to terms with all this before, what would have turned out different if they would have met with you all later and you all have the same credentials, everything like that, of what's an assessor supposed to have?
I think I can answer your question. You go back to that old economics rule of assuming a can opener.
Yeah.
We've got to assume that the information that was provided at the assessor's office was the same information that we saw, which wouldn't necessarily be the case. They could have met with the assessor's office, and the assessor's office would have said, you've got to provide some additional documentation for us to be able to understand and support this, whether it be an appraisal, your rent roll, your operating history. I know we had some of them come into the face-to-face interview, and they looked at it and say, well, I went and saw the assessor. However, I didn't bring my operating statement or rent roll, which they said they would need it, so here it is today. And I also had some people who came in who brought their rent roll and their operating statement to the assessor and then didn't bring it to the face-to-face interview, and they looked at us and they said, well, the assessor's office has it. You can go get it from them. And unfortunately, at that juncture, we couldn't. I couldn't tell you whether we would have changed it or not, but this is the components that if you go to the assessor's office and you didn't get what you want, maybe you go back to your arsenal and get some additional comparables or some additional information or additional photographs or information on the condition of your property to help the referee in this case look at the property in a greater detail than they provided initially to the assessor's office. But I'm just speculating on that. I can't absolutely tell you.
Commissioner, if I could just, Roger Morrissey again. The word subjective is a dirty word with appraisers. It's objective. An appraisal, definition of an appraisal is an opinion of value. Chris and I could look at the same documentation and come up with a different number.
Okay.
And both of us could say, honestly, I believe, based on the data, and here's why, and he could say the other thing, and it's an opinion. And both of us are to be subjective. I don't get a bonus fee commission for high assessments, and my job is to be fair. And that's the same thing with Chris's. And we can look at a property. My wife says all the time, she'll drive by and say, oh, they paid too much for that house. Or that one's really a deal. You haven't even been inside it, but she's an expert, because she's married to an appraiser. But it still is an opinion, and I don't mean to make light of it.
No, because I didn't expect to say nothing, but every time I hear this, now I just feel like we're funding two sides of the same war.
Well, there's a lot of check and balances that go through it, and in the last couple of years we've put a lot more in, and I think the property owners have a lot of different opportunities to be heard.
Commissioner Kraft?
Roger, I believe when you get home, your supper's going to be burnt. It seems to be, this is the first year we had face-to-face meetings because of the change in state law. And I do believe that it's a very good change, and that it'll slowly, as people catch on, more people will come to you, and we'll have less of a burden on the referees. The process we are using, other than this face-to-face, was set up prior to my joining the board. And if I recall the history, the reason for us changing the process when commissioners used to be hearing cases one-to-one was to speed up the process and to take the politics out of it, so that we couldn't take somebody who is a personal contributor to our campaign, a big fancy house, and say, hey, I agree with you, your house is not worth it, when the appraisers, the experts that we hire, say it's worth Y, and we're saying it's worth X as a commissioner. Where's my expertise? The one with the most expertise here is Commissioner Morgan. But I don't think he calls himself an appraiser, because I believe, and you can correct me when I'm wrong, which I usually am when I deal with you, I believe that he wouldn't pass himself off as an appraiser. I believe he'd pass himself off as knowledgeable.
Well,
Just a minute.
You can respond.
no, I was an appraiser, licensed, and I was president of the Independent Fee Appraisers back in another life 30-some years ago.
I retract
did
what
give
I say.
No, it's okay. I did
And
give
he- and
it
he's-
up, but that's my background.
I might add, his father was also an appraiser. So
Okay.
he knew his
So,
father too.
Yeah, I'm willing to be corrected when I'm wrong. But it was to take us out of the process. And I believe the process works, and it works well. Now, Ted Selden is a personal friend. But unfortunately, I believe in the process, and I'm going to vote against us changing the recommendation of the referees, because I do not have the knowledge the referees have. I have not seen and studied these papers. Now, Mr. Goodwillie, it's my understanding that the original taxes on this are based upon what you call the base, which was 16,000, 160,000.
No, $16,700.
And that's what, anything above that goes to pay off the loan or goes to the developer to pay off the loan. Is that correct?
That is exactly correct.
Okay. So the original developer is paying off the original loan based upon a valuation of 16,700. Is that correct?
Well, let me try and explain it a different way. The base value is the starting point, sort of before any improvements get added. As improvements get added and value increases, the taxes on that increased value go to pay off the finance. So the political subdivisions will still be getting the taxes on that 16.7, but whether the value for the improvement on this parcel, or the excess for this parcel, whether it's valued at 1.2 or whatever the referee recommended, I think 759, the taxes on that amount will continue to go pay off the financing to benefit the developer, even though the property is now owned by somebody else.
Okay. Yeah, that is for all practical purposes what I thought. Thank you.
Commissioner Boyle?
Well, Commissioner Kraft made an excellent case for us to get out of the business of Board of Equalization. He talked about not having the expertise, talked about, that it ought to be take us out of the process, the politics of it, if you want to call it that, small p. It's difficult not to name who the owner is, so, and that shouldn't make any difference who it is. So it's kind of like when I was in law school, and I had a good friend, a close friend, who was teaching a course, and I took the course, and I'll be very honest, I really liked this particular course. I did very well in it, and I had to work. I was working while I was going to school, and so I took the exam after everybody else took it in an office in the law school. And when I handed the exam in to the professor, he handed me my grade, and he gave me a B. And it was clearly an A-plus paper. And he did that because he said, well, I had to be fair, and I don't want anybody to think that I'm treating you especially. So, and I had another professor do the same thing to me. So, because I was 10 years older when I went to school, and I knew them, I ran with them, drank with them, friends. So anyhow, here we have a developer who did all of this work on this intersection, 72nd Street, did all these things the city required on TIF, and he suddenly, we've got to show that we're neutral so we don't give him any relief. And I don't think that's fair. I've been on the wrong side of that club, and it's not fair to be in that situation. And I believe that the assessor's office for years has accepted commercial people coming in to see them, and I think the change in the state law was allowing homeowners to come in and have that access. Maybe I'm wrong, but I always thought that the commercial people could make appointments and come in, and I always thought that was a great advantage. And I did support and do support I thought it was allowing the homeowners to come in and make this. That's the change that occurred. And remind you that my motion is to support the assessor. And so there is a tension, and there should be, between the referee and the assessor. The assessor arrived at this value, and that's the one that I think we should support. And if someone goes to TIF, it will be someone else other than the developer who's responsible for the financing of all these improvements.
Commissioner Kraft?
Yes, and I respect your opinion on this, but I also respect the opinion of the property owner who pays the taxes based upon the figures that he gave to the referee. Now, I don't know the owner of the property, the current owner. As I said, I am good friends with the Seldons. I hate to vote against them. But I'm also good friends with John Labai, and I'm going to vote against changing his property for the same reason. We have a process in place that for a $25 fee, and I believe they waive it if you're a pauper, you can go and protest this and get a third opinion. And I believe that process works well, and I respect the process. Now, if I didn't think the process worked well, I would join you on your side. Thank you.
With that, no other lights. There is a motion and a second to pull this item from all of them and
I'm
leave
sorry,
it as...
Commissioner Kraft was talking to me and I couldn't hear what you said.
The motion on the floor is to remove this item from the set of protests that we have and set it at the original value on this parcel, on this parcel.
That's correct.
Okay. Please vote.
Motion passes.
Commissioner Boyle?
Don't you love these tight votes like that? That's cool. That's good. That's why I really like this voting system. 'Cause can't wait to... Okay, the other, let's see, another one that I want to bring up is, and I always mispronounce his last name. Please help me, Mark.
Labai.
Labai, is it really? That's the same as the Jesuit up at Creighton, I guess,
is.
huh? All
They're
right.
relatives.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay, now I know that. This property is at 2236 St. Mary's Avenue. The parcel number is 082835002, and it is residential. It was, let's see, the protested value was $361,000, and it has been reduced to $300,000. So the assessor, I guess difficult to see. I guess I really need my. Okay, the assessor thought it was 361, and the referees brought it down to 300. So I don't know what's fair in this. I think if you look at the, excuse me, if you look at the neighborhood and the condition, which is always, I think, always important. I mean, a home that's located at in that area that's heavily commercial, and also, this, I don't want to use the word blighted, but it's very difficult not to. The area near and also just a block away, what the condition is of 24th and Leavenworth. I think it's, and I don't mean to disparage 24th and Leavenworth, but it's a difficult area. It's a tough one. I think he's a pioneer in this area and deserves some consideration. So I don't know that he even actually asked for a figure, but I would be willing, and I would suggest that we take the referee's recommendation of $300,000. I don't know.
Leave this one in as is.
Could leave it in as is. Yeah, I think it's, that's not probably what he wants, but I think it's down $61,000. That's about as good as it gets, I think.
Okay, so you're okay with leaving that one in the larger?
Yeah, he'll have to appeal that.
Did you have any other ones?
Let's see, the other one I don't think is, I was curious what happened, because the only one we changed last year was Target. And I wanted to get a history on it, and I did. I think, Roger, can you come to the podium, or Mike Goodwillie? On the Target Corporation, it's parcel number 0913447542 at 7200 Dodge Street. And we had it at, I guess it's staying right where your valuation is, at $8,718,000. That's what was recommended. It seems like last year it was substantially less, like $3 million less. Do you have any recollection of that?
I don't. I'm sorry,
Okay.
Commissioner.
Well, I guess under the circumstances, this one, the request was dismissed by the referees, and so it is left at $8,718,600. And so that one would fall into the category to just leave it on this list. And the only one that comes off is the one that we just did on Ames.
Okay. Commissioner Kraft?
Yes, and regarding the artist John Labai, as I said, he's a personal friend of mine. I don't think, if he were to put that house on the market for $300,000, I honestly don't think he'd get that very fast. It'd be a waiting game. But again, I'm not going to protest it, because I think we have a good process in place to do the protest. And he was granted some relief. My personal opinion is perhaps not enough, but I'm not going to contest it for the same reasons that I'm not an expert, and I didn't contest. I wasn't going to contest the other one.
Commissioner Morgan?
Well, I was going to bring up a different matter, but so we'll wait and discuss this one unless It's okay now to do that?
Well, we're going to vote on the whole package now.
Okay.
So did you have one you wanted?
I wanted to ask Roger a question, if I'm correct on this. It looked like on one of the sheets that the Ralston Building LLC, that was reduced about $850,000, 48%, 49% reduction. Is that was on that sheet?
Yeah, this was a sheet that I believe Catherine ran off, or Commissioner Boyle ran off. And here again, like the other properties, I will stick with our assessed valuation until I would be given any, I don't have specific.
Is this the former Info USA or whatever on 86?
I really don't know.
Okay.
I really don't know.
I just wondered, you know, and maybe it's been sitting vacant for 3 years. I don't know. I think that is, if I'm correct, I'm thinking that's Info USA buildings over on 86th Street there south. And I was just wondering, you know, a 50% reduction happens sometimes because that's probably a difficult property to lease. The other one I was going to ask you about is Emmer Brothers LLC on 107th and L Street. Now, I know where that is. And that one was reduced 45% from $4.5 million down to $2.5. Those just, other commissioners, I'd say it to you, it just seems like a very large reduction, and I just wonder what the circumstances were, because 107th, you know, and L is good location, and I'm just wondering what happened that you get that kind of a reduction of a couple $1 million.
Commissioner Boyle?
Yes, excuse me. Well, I did ask Catherine to prepare this list because it starts out, I mean, the first one at the top with we have a 96.59 reduction, and it's some residential property, and it's a small amount of money, but it goes from $8,800 down to $300. And then there's, and I'm sure these are, well, I don't know what to say about them. There's one on Elk Ridge Circle, a development company that's residential, that is dropped from $537,500 to $3,200, and it's a 93% reduction. My feeling on this is that I do not want these included in the package that we're voting on. I think, and I spoke to Mr. Goodwillie about this and alerted him to it, took this list to him yesterday, and said what I think these are, I think these ought to be coming back to us as corrections on an agenda where the assessor goes in and looks at these properties and then submits them to us when they're in a timely manner on an agenda that says these are corrections, that this one on Park Wild that was reduced from $71,400 to $11,000, an 84% reduction. This is why. There's no explanation for why this happened. That's Commissioner Morgan just brought up on too, that he's familiar with. I just think in all fairness, and I can't vote on these, so I'd need to have these excluded from the package that we're considering. I have very little knowledge of what happened anyway because of the way this system works. As I've said before, it's like a fire hose. You get all this information on thousands of changes, and you know, it's kind of like a rubber stamp time or ask questions. And when you ask questions, it turns into a long, dragged-out thing like this.
I think, Commissioner Boyle, the point, though, is that there is information to support that with our referees. I mean, again, the protests, they were mailed in, the referees reviewed them. This was past, you know, the time that they had to go in and speak face-to-face with the assessor if they chose to do so. And some did, some didn't. And so then the next step would be to come to the referees, who are literally sitting as us. We've removed ourselves from that. So they then get all this information from the taxpayer on these properties and come up with their recommendation put that. So there is information. You may not have it right there at your fingertips, but within those packets of protest, the information is there as to how they arrived at that. I don't know how, because of the time frame there is, and again, the process that we have, whether or not I just don't know how we would fit in us being brought back into the equation again to look at these. I don't know a good way to do that other than go back and sit the way we sat with the assessor's office and figure these out. So pulling them out, I don't know if that would even really do what you're wanting to do, because again, we're crunched on time. There's no time between now and the 10th to which we have to have these all approved to go through and make sure that what the referees have looked at is what we feel is justification for that value. So I'm not trying to say I don't want to look at something different. I just don't know if it's good, if it would work. Commissioner Boyle.
Well, I don't want to go back. I shouldn't use this word, but my beef is not with the referees. My questions are with the assessor. Here's a property on Howard Street, a multiple commercial, that was valued at $140,600. Now, that was set by the assessor.
Right.
I want to know how the assessor set that value, $140,600, and then the protest was made, and the valuation was reduced to $40,000. Now, I don't disagree with the $40,000. I mean, I guess I would say if you have to throw darts, I'd accept these valuations because the assessors looked at it, or their referees looked at them and said this is what they should be. My question goes back further. I think this is, and I could use this politely, is a mistake. There were mistakes made by the office in assigning these valuations. And I don't want to be a part of just kind of blowing off these mistakes. Mm-hmm. I think we need to know how do we get from 140,000 down to 40, and how do we get from 100 well, here's 266 down to 89,000. Mm-hmm. I mean, how do we do that? I don't know. I'd like to know a lot more about each one of these, but it's the back part on the assessor, not the referee, that I'm questioning. So
I gotcha.
I would make a motion that the properties listed on this sheet, 55 of them, I believe, be removed from the big list, and ask the assessor to please look at these properties and come back and present them as corrections to the valuation as soon as possible.
I think, Commissioner Boyle, if you'd be willing to accept this as a compromise, that because the time frame, that may be a piece that we need to work on for the next year, but there's no way we can pull those out now and have the assessor look at all of those and come back before the 10th in order to do what you're asking to do.
Okay. I'll tell you what, I don't like that compromise, but I'll tell you what I will compromise. I'll offer this as my compromise, is that I will not try to remove these from this big list. If the assessor will agree to taking this list and coming back and showing us how these amounts were arrived at to help us understand. I mean, there's something wrong. There's something wrong.
Understand.
There's not many. I mean, there are thousands and thousands of parcels to value. But it concerns me that, we have some that are being reduced by, 81%.
Right.
And I want to know what happened.
Okay. Commissioner Yes, Commissioner Morgan.
Thank you, Mary Ann.
I'm sorry.
What I was going to ask, if it might be possible, is the two that I talked about are way, way more. Some of these properties early on, residential, I thought, who knows? They could be boarded up. They could have had a fire. There's a number of things that could have happened on those properties, for all I know. And they brought pictures or whatever. But the two that I'm talking about, we've got the $1 million or $2 million reductions, like on 107th and L. I'm wondering what happened there. I know that's good. I was thinking maybe there's a way for Mr. Goodwillie and Roger, while we go through other agenda items, which will be here for a few hours, that they could come back up And at least on those, which is way more money than all these others put together substantially, they could come back and tell us, hey, there was a mistake on 107th and L on the $2.5 million reduction. Because that's, or $2 million reduction, excuse me, of what happened there. Did they tear down a building, or did something happen, or part of a building? That's what I'd like to know. The one on 86 that had a couple $1 million reduction or thereabouts, that one I'm thinking has been vacant for years when Info USA was bought out, left Omaha. So maybe that's justified, and I can go along with what he says. But if that'd be permissible, and Roger and Mr. Goodwillie agreed, they could tell us on those two fairly quickly of why they agreed and reduced them a couple $1 million. Is that fair? Not totally fair.
Commissioner Roger Morrissey, first of all, we're not the ones that agreed to reduce them, and that's the referees. And, that maybe can be a list that's reviewed by your referees to come up with this. I might point out that we've got 213,000 parcels in Douglas County. And I want to go on record also that the clerk's office got recognition for how good of a job they did. And I want to point out that this year there were 21,663 protests. And that's about 1%, about 10% of the property. That's a low number for protest. With that middle, hopefully with that middle hearing that we have in February, that number's reduced. Also, there were only 888 changes this year by the Board of Equalization, which is less than 1%. I mean, I can stand up here and get beat up for saying you made all these dumb mistakes, but when we're talking about 213,000 parcels, that's a drop in the bucket. And I haven't heard anything about, good job, Morrissey, you must have been right on all those other properties. But we're wrong on these properties, and it's not me. I stand here like I did before on the earlier property and say we're sticking with our number, the commercial property. I'm sticking with our number here, but I'm saying the system worked. That the property owner had the opportunity to come in and check on those, and your referees were the ones that said, okay, the assessor made a mistake, or he didn't have all the data. And I think you were very good in pointing out, Commissioner, that there could have been fire damage, could have been boarded up, could have been condemned that we didn't know by the city. We're trying to get that on a regular basis. It might have been a foreclosure property. It might have been a property for whatever. There are a lot of reasons but that number's not big in my opinion. And when you take that small of a sample, statistically, I think we did all right. We strive for perfection, but perfection will never attain it. It's not attainable, and we're going to be wrong. And when we're dealing with opinions, like Chris and I could stand on any property in Omaha, and probably on half of them, we would come up with a different number if we were doing a fee appraisal for the bank. So I'd be more than happy to get that information on those properties, and I think that those are things, Commissioner, that we look into at the end of every protest period. We go through what the referees did and look and say, whoops, some of them we really screwed up on that. Some of them we're going to say, let's agree to disagree. We don't think that there should have been that type of relief. So I'm more than happy to get that information, but to say that we're really bad because we've got a handful of properties out of that many, maybe I'm just taking it personal.
I want to be sure Mary Ann's okay with me asking another question. Roger, you're not bad, but I won't say that about Mr. Goodwillie, but anyway. And my question might be on 107th and L, if it'd be possible, that $2 million reduction. I'm thinking your office didn't change that. It was the referees that reduced it 2 million.
Right.
So what we did on the other, Commissioner Boyle, is we left it as it was. There's a part of me that feels like, and I don't know anything about 107th and L, if the referee does of what happened there on that commercial property, you know, that's what I'd like to know, because that's a substantial reduction, and I'm wondering what happened, that they decided to do it. And if we could leave that, I may want to say, hey, I'd like to leave that the same way as the other if I had more information. Do you know anything about 107th and L, the $2 million reduction?
Chris Musto. Commissioner, I was at least given a heads up on several parcel numbers. I was not given that parcel number, and I didn't pull any information on it, but I will reiterate what I believe Roger was saying is there are a lot of things that take place on a property, and I do believe that Catherine Hall asked that I look over some of the valuations that had some larger adjustments on the commercial, and I did pull many of those larger ones up and take a second look and looked at the comments, and that's where I've got packets, comments, information, and on some of those larger ones, I will tell you, there were purchase agreements that were recorded. There were removal of buildings. There were situations where it was a new construction property and the assessor had set the maybe finish at a higher level than the property owner was able to demonstrate the property was as of January 1. There are so many multiple pieces of information going in there that it's very possible. I'm very happy to sit down with you on any one of the parcels and go through the process that we did, but I don't necessarily, I'm not able to hold in retention all the details, and I would hate to misspeak on a particular property, but I would certainly be happy to take the time and open that up, look at the comments that were made by the referee, the coordinator, the packet from the assessor, and the information provided by the property owner, just what we had to work with that on any one of the properties, or as many as you would like. I know we saw 2,200 properties. A lot of them weren't changed, but those that were, I understand your questions, and I do feel that I can take the time to walk you through to bring you hopefully to a comfort level, and certainly with your background and understanding, I think, would you be afforded additional information, you would be able to see why these changes were made.
Okay, and I'd be glad to do that at a convenient time that you'd like to tell me in the next week, and maybe we can't do anything, but I still wouldn't mind, if it's fair, to ask Roger if we recessed and went to our board meeting, if other commissioners think it's worthwhile. I wouldn't mind having you look at your information on, Roger, 107th and L and the $2 million reduction to see if there's something that occurred there, and then in an hour or two at least hear about that one. Because otherwise, if we don't decide today, it's got the $2 million reduction, and we're trying to figure out what happens next year. And that's a substantial amount of money.
Commissioner Boyle?
Well, I think maybe the better approach is for the referees to dig up the information on this property. They're the ones who reduced it, and they would have all the data that the assessor has, I assume. And maybe it would be better to ask them to do this, us recess, and them come back with that property on 107th, and also the one you brought up in Ralston at South 86th Circle. Those two are questionable. But before I go
But is that enough time? I'm wondering if you can do that in the next hour and a half.
I think we have, as long as we have access to the computer, it can be done in 15, 20 minutes, couldn't it?
That'd be great.
I think that'd be the right thing to do.
I mean, depending how many parcels you give me.
No,
probably two.
Just those two.
Just those two. I don't think that's a problem to get that information pulled together in relatively short order. It's here in the building.
Well, I think that's reasonable, and I think it's a good suggestion that Commissioner Morgan made, that we get to that point in recess, let him look this up, bring it back to us, come back into session, and then...
And also just how many square feet of building there are there. That'd be great.
It'll all be in the packet of information. I think I can answer any of your questions from the information available.
I'd like to,
No, let's...
You figure out how to do it.
Yeah, let me finish Commissioner Kraft.
Yes, and this is for Mike Goodwillie, if I may. Mr. Goodwillie, the Turk process. If we do not change these two properties we're talking about, and you disagree with the assessment, you can protest at Turk, can you not?
The assessor,
assessor's office.
The assessor, Mike Goodwillie, Douglas County Assessor's Office. The assessor does have appeal rights to Turk.
I thought so.
The office.
And you do a good job. Roger, you also do a good job. So therefore, it's on the record.
Commissioner
Thank
Boyle.
you. Well, I was going to try to make this comment before Chris was at the podium, but I want to apologize for not being artful in raising this question. I thought carefully about how to use the language that would not offend you and would give the impression that you haven't done one hell of a job, because you have. And I owe you an apology, and I apologize. I'm sorry for the remarks that were offensive. I did not mean them. I was trying to be careful, and I wasn't careful enough. And the same to Mr. Goodwillie and your entire staff. I've worked with members of your staff over the years, and they're top-flight people. And so I feel very bad that I offended you. I did like to see that Irish come out, though. That was something I understood immediately when you got to the podium. So there was another message coming across. But I do apologize, Roger. It was not meant to offend, and I feel very bad about that. So I want to make that clear.
I think if we just hold this item off to the side, we did the rest of the items. We have a motion to recess out of the Board of Equalization and continue into the agenda for the Douglas County Board of Commissioners. When they're ready, they can come back and we can take it up. Or, well, it's going to take longer than 5 minutes, so. Okay. So is that okay with everybody?
And then we would vote on the entire thing?
Yes.
Yeah.
So do I have a motion to recess out
Second.
of Board of Equalization
Yes.
and enter into the Douglas
That's
County
great.
Board of Commissioners? Please vote.
Thank you. Chris, thank you.
Say, Chris, I've got that. I've got this list.
Thank you.
Motion
I'll take
passes.
that from you. Thank you.
Agenda for the Douglas County Board of
I've got the
Commissioners,
little
roll call,
marks
please.
next to the ones that are...
Commissioner Boyle,
Yes.
Commissioner Duda, Commissioner Kraft, Commissioner Morgan, Commissioner Rogers, Commissioner Tusha. Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Here, item A, approval of the minutes of the Board of Commissioners meeting held Tuesday, July 29, 2014, and approval of the claims submitted for payment processed through Tuesday, August 5, 2014.
Motion approved, item B.
Second.
Any questions or comments? Please vote.
Motion passes.
Next is the consent agenda, items A through K for a total of 11 items. Where's the one?
Yes.
D2. There has been a request that D2 be pulled from the consent agenda.
Motion approved.
Just gave it to Chris.
So again, it's approval of the consent minus D2.
Excuse me.
Uh-huh.
I'd like to also have a little discussion on I. D2 and I.
And I. D2 and I. Okay?
Right.
All right. Any other items? Okay, please vote.
Motion passes.
We'll go back to D2, the interlocal agreement with Papio, Missouri River Natural Resource District for Douglas County Project C-28520, dam site 15A near 168th and 4th Street. And Commissioner Duda, I guess the request, will be coming from you to kind of update us on this?
Well, thank you. I think we have some people here who probably know far more than I do about this, but we have had a request from some of the Washington County Board of Supervisors. They would like an opportunity to get together to discuss some of this with us before we take action. They are fearful that our approval could imply consent to the partnership stormwater plan as opposed to the Douglas County, Washington County stormwater plan. So therefore it seems as a courtesy to Washington County, if nothing else, to have that conversation with them before we move ahead with action on this item.
Are you asking for a week layover?
I don't...
2 weeks?
What I guess I'd really like would just, if I table it, then anybody can bring it back any time that they feel it's ready. I don't know if we'll be ready next week or not. I don't know when we'll have an opportunity to sit down with Washington County. Might take 2 weeks.
Is there anything on the current agreements that we were supposed to be moving forward with that would hinder the not having a time frame?
I would have to defer to Dan Kudelek on that, if what kind of time frame constraints we have.
I know you said this was in our 1 and 6 year plan forever, and I just want to make sure we're not. I just want to make sure, I don't have a problem laying it over, but I want to make sure we have a time sensitive, that we don't lay it over till infinity and miss
Yes, I
dates
understand,
that we have to worry
Commissioners.
about.
Dan Kudelek, County Engineer's Office. There is no time sensitivity to this document at this point. You know, I think the director told us a couple weeks ago they intend to have bids out for construction this fall.
Okay.
And so we do have a little bit of time to work out your differences, so we'll defer to your opinion on that.
Okay. If just so it doesn't get lost in the shuffle, are you okay just saying that we'll bring it back the first meeting in September? And then if it doesn't happen, we'll just extend it again?
Fine.
Okay.
Fine. That sounds fine.
That way it doesn't get lost.
All right, I would like to make the motion then to table this item until the first meeting in September.
Okay. Commissioner Morgan?
I was going to suggest if Washington County has that interest, you know, and we did it 2 weeks, my thought is we can meet with them. I mean, in the next 2 weeks. I think that helps us expedite it rather than waiting till September. I'm just saying, if I'm really interested, I should be able to find a time for an hour to meet with them here or wherever, or halfway between or something like that. If you're good with 2 weeks, I think we just say, hey, 2 weeks and we make contact if the chairperson thinks that's a good idea.
I just want to interject something. I can tell you that even having 6 months to get a meeting sometimes is nearly impossible sometimes. When you're talking about another county and other parties involved. So again,
I'll go with
as long
September.
as we're okay with
No, I'll go with
anything,
what you say then.
the first meeting in September, we'll bring it back, and in between that time, you can pick whoever you want on staff to make sure that that meeting gets organized. Okay? All right.
All right. Thank you, Commissioners.
Commissioner Boyle?
I think there's other issues that are involved with this, and that's our stormwater policy, because that's really at the heart of this. And I think part of this, I appreciate Commissioner Morgan wanting to accelerate this, but it is much more complicated because this, after you really look at it, this proposal flies in the face of a stormwater policy that was adopted by this county board. And we had a full-blown committee working on it. A couple of the members are here today, and I think they even may want to speak about it. But let's see, Kent Holm is in the audience as well, and I think later on he's going to be talking about some things for some stormwater improvements that the county is supporting that would not have been probably approved by the NRD. I mean, their philosophy is totally different than what we adopted, and so it's a big issue. It's more than just this bridge or whatever. So, there was a reason why when LB 60 was debated, that they said, "Oh, we'll give you exclusive, any dam, any lake that's in your county exclusively, you can veto. And there are none in Douglas County, and that was done on purpose. But I'm not sure what's happening in Washington County. And Claire and I started asking, I was sitting next to Claire, I said, why in the world isn't Washington County involved in this big thing with the NRD? So the two of us go up there and we find out why. They are concerned about eminent domain, the taking of farmland for lakes, all these sorts of things they're totally opposed, and we decided that they're right. So we went down and worked together. So I don't mean to talk this long, but I think there's a stormwater policy that needs to be brought into this and discussed along with Washington County and whether or not this should even be done at all. So that's why I think it does take the time that Commissioner Duda and Commissioner Borges put together.
Okay. Dan?
Yeah, if I might, we, the County Engineer's Office, are not involved with the stormwater management concept. We are only trying to protect the county road systems for not only Douglas County, but for the city of Omaha. Ultimately will be, no doubt, in this part of the county. So, the decision, if it is to not go forward with this interlocal agreement, it will have significant cost ramifications on the future of this road system. It would, in effect, probably distinguish the opportunity to ever build 180th Street north of Ida. It would probably distinguish the opportunity to widen Ida Street, where this bridge is being replaced, and it would complicate some of those other adjoining roads. So, we're talking long-term here, of course, Commissioners, but that's where we're focused on. We're treating, I think I mentioned to you, the NRD like we would if this was any developer that came forward, and try to coordinate with them the best we can, the road systems for today and tomorrow, trying to avoid conflicts.
Right.
So, and the other fact is that this dam is physically within the city of Omaha's jurisdiction, zoning jurisdiction. And so it will get built, I'm afraid. I think that's going to happen, regardless of what the board would do in regard to this, controversy over the partnership. So I guess we have to look at it from that perspective, too. It does have serious ramifications.
That's actually what I was going to ask, and Commissioner Boyle, while I respect the work that we all did on the stormwater management, it is within the city, so we don't really have we can do the political pressure and conversation about it, but ultimately it's probably going to get built. So then that does become the question of how do you protect the best interest of the county and get in layman's term, bang for the biggest buck. Or bang for a buck. So anyway, I do agree wholeheartedly. I was a part of that committee. I agree with working with Washington County, absolutely. But we also have to come to the realization that there may be some things that are out of our control that are going to continue anyway with or without us. So, okay. Commissioner Boyle?
Well, Dan, I appreciate your comments, and that's why it's very important that you participate in this meeting that we have, and it'll be an open meeting, of course. But if ultimately the city has responsibility for it, then let's send them the bill. Let's tell them you build this.
Well, we'd vote for that.
Yeah, I mean,
but it is
we don't. Douglas County, the county board does not agree with these lakes being built. That's what they are. And I had so much paper to bring today that I didn't bring a story from Cedar Rapids about a dam that broke and overflowed and what the governor did and all that sort of thing. And I had several copies to hand out, and I just simply forgot them with the bulk of paper I bought on the valuation information. But I personally don't agree with them at all. And I think that I think the NRD went off the rails a few years ago and got distracted and became a party to doing lakes. And, there's a story on the front page of the World Herald, and it shows a lake next to Werner Park. It looks really beautiful, but, there's information that says that The water that is filling that lake comes from 3 little streams off 3 farms. I mean, it's just like there is no flood danger there at all. And so now you've shifted into beautification or something else. And that's happening while the City of Omaha residents have to pay the bulk of that operation, plus this bonding authority they have with LB 160. As mayor years ago, I wrote to the head of the NRD because we had troubles at Cass Street, 78th and Cass, we had flooding. And I wrote and I said, we need help with this. And I got a brochure back in the mail, a brochure showing that they had done things in some other places, you know, in the county. And they were not doing anything, they would not do anything in the city. So I got a bill introduced in the legislature that was supported by Lauren Schmidt, who was the head of the Natural Resources Committee, which was extraordinary that he did. And Omaha was going to pull out of the Papio at the time, the Papio Resource District, and do our own thing. Well, they panicked. They shifted to one person, one vote, and they started spending money inside the premises. One last thing I did that was very effective was I read the statute and discovered that Bernie, we could appoint a city council member to oversee the operations of the NRD, and I appointed Bernie Simon, and Bernie did a hell of a job. So anyway, this is an ongoing, long process, and one that I don't think we should have absolutely not approved today, and we need a lot more discussion on what our policies are, how this either fits or doesn't fit, and decide then whether or not we're going to say, let's build this, and if we don't, then I guess I don't know what happens, but that's where you can come in too. So,
yeah, I certainly appreciate that, and I hope that we can come to some middle ground here to, satisfy everybody's concerns. And maybe there's some language could be crafted to give you your voice, but yet protect these road systems if the dam is going to go forward, which I would be interested to find out from the county attorney's perspective. I think it will. I was told recently that they are down to about 4 tracts of property that they're still negotiating on, so they've acquired the vast majority of the property already, so, which is probably half the cost of this project. You know, it's a big portion of the 40 million is land, of course. So it's down the path quite a ways. And our office has spent, I think, 6 or 7 years working with the NRD and the city and the Parks Department, trying to come up with a document which we have. And I feel it's a very fair document. I think the NRD staff was more than accommodating, Commissioner, in regard to, the road systems. Let's just put it that way.
Well, I think, it was brought to us now to approve, and we have a right and an obligation to review it.
Absolutely. I understand.
Commissioner Tusha?
Hey, Dan, thank you for bringing the plan. I believe it was last week when you were talking about all the bridges and roads. Do you have a tentative date or a tentative year when you were thinking about all this process?
On this particular bridge? Yes. As a matter of fact, Ida Street, which is going to be changed in grade, it's going to be raised about 25 feet in elevation, higher than the existing elevation. That will be one of the first things that will be done in regard to this construction of this project, to bring in that embankment. And we've asked them to build it to a 4-lane section embankment, and that's where the money comes in. We've agreed. They are only obligated to replace in kind, the NRD, a 2-lane road, 2-lane bridge at their cost. We asked them to grade it to 4 because ultimately there'll be water impounded on both sides of Ida Street, and it would be very difficult, if not impossible, to ever grade that road. So to answer your question directly, this will be one of the first things that's done. They'll close Ida Street, tear out Ida Street, regrade Ida Street in the exact location, just make it higher and wider. It would be very similar to Zarinsky Lake on 168th Street, where you can drive across Lake Zarinsky on 168th Street today. Well, the city of Omaha is going to be widening that to 4 lanes here in the next year or two. They're working on the plans. Well, that embankment, if you drive down there sometime in the next week or two, you can see it's been graded wider then is required for a 2-lane road. And that will allow them to build this 4-lane road without impacting Lake Serwinski. So this is
So it's real similar.
very similar.
Okay.
Very similar concept. And we entered into an agreement at that time with the Corps of Engineers. This preceded the NRD, so it was the Corps that we dealt with in that particular situation back in the 70s.
All right, thank you.
You bet.
Thank you, Dan. Mike, did you want? Okay. I think there's people from the audience that, okay.
Mike Ryan, 11130 Jackson Street.
Morning.
Good morning. I was on the Stormwater Committee along with a number of other folks, a couple of them who are here from the public, and some folks from Washington County, and the primary representative on that committee from the Douglas County Board was Claire Duda. And through this process, we came up with a set of stormwater policies that went 180 degrees from the direction the NRD is going. In other parts of the country, what's being done to control stormwater is what they call low-impact development or best management practices. And what that does is it takes the rainwater pretty much at the point where it falls, the stormwater, and prevents it from going into creeks by allowing it to infiltrate into the ground like it used to before we came upon the scene and started building impervious surfaces that cause this rainwater to flow off and get into creeks, flow into creeks, rather than percolate down into the groundwater. Before man, Mother Nature was able to take 85% about of that rainwater and allow it to infiltrate down into the groundwater pretty much where it falls. So you only had about 15% going into the creeks. Claire and I, and some of the other folks from our Stormwater Committee, attended a number of these so-called Papio Partnership meetings over a number of years. And what I became very much aware of was the NRD is building dams for developers. And you might ask, well, what's the connection there? Well, what the developers know and have known for a long time, having a lake close to the development property, residential primarily property that they own, enhances the value of that property, that lot, that home. And that's why we're building dams. The streams that we're building them on, as Mike pointed out earlier, are piddly little streams. The one for Dam Site 5 down in Sarpy County serves a watershed of 3,000 acres. According to the Nebraska Department of Agriculture, that's an area about the size of 3 average farms. That's a $21 million dam to control runoff from an area that's no bigger than 3 average farms. Pretty expensive way to control runoff in that small area. Low-impact development could have done it much cheaper. The reason I feel, and I'm sure of this, the NRD wants this interlocal agreement is they want Douglas County as a partner. We're talking about $250,000 to put this extra dirt at the tail end of the dam for future road building. This is a $43 million project. Adding another $250,000 of cost for the NRD is no big deal. And for the taxpayer, I'm going to pay it either in my NRD taxes or I'm going to pay it in my county tax. It doesn't make much difference to me as an average taxpayer. You know, who pays it? I'm going to end up paying it one way or the other. So, you know, the question of this interlocal agreement, to me, almost seems moot. the NRD can do it. You know, it's a fraction of what they're planning to spend on the dams, on that dam. And I guess, you know, the engineer's office talks about they weren't a party to the stormwater policies. That really disturbs me. I thought these policies covered all the activities that Douglas County did in relation to stormwater. I feel that the engineer's office should have been aware of these policies and should be following them. It's the best way to deal with stormwater. If we could turn on the overhead projector for a second. This is a page part of a page off the NRD's website dealing with this dam down in Sarpy County that I told you drains 3 farms and costs $21 million. It's the fact sheet. And you'll notice on there who the project partners are. One of them is Sarpy County. Sarpy County is still a member of that partnership. If you contribute $250,000, you will be saying that our policies really don't mean that much. And what the NRD will be gaining is a partner in Douglas County, which is something they want very much. They want you back into that partnership. They want you legitimizing what they do. Yeah.
Could you read that? I can't see it.
Well, the only important part is really down here where they talk about project partners. Papio, Missouri NRD, City of Papillion, Sarpy County, Nebraska Game and Parks Commission.
Thank you.
I think what the engineer's office should have done was say that this bridge and this road is county property, and if you're going to build a dam and a lake for developers, go ahead and build it, but don't interfere with our road and our bridge. You know, how do they come in and take over this land as part of their lake that's county property? How do they get to tear down an existing bridge? Why is the engineer's office even cooperating with these folks? Now, to add a little bit of factual information to what I'm saying with regard to property values, around the time we were working on these policies, this board commissioned or partially paid for a study done by, I believe it was Dr. Schultz, was that his name, at UNO? Claire, correct me if I'm wrong. Was it Dr. Schultz that did that study on land values? Douglas County paid for it. He first went to the NRD with the notion of doing this study to find out how much lakes add to the value of a developer's property. The NRD did not like that idea at all because the truth would have started to come out, so they chased him off. He evidently then came to Douglas County, and Douglas County financed all or the greatest portion of his study.
If I may interrupt you, he went to the partnership before he came, and we sent him to the partnership, and I made the motion that the partnership, that was when Douglas County was still a part of the partnership.
Okay.
And I made the motion that the partnership fund his study.
Right.
Was told they had no available monies, and so I shut up until the next month when they started spending lots and lots of money again.
Right. They had plenty of money, though, for a dog and pony show that they were going to put on at various places around the city, run by an advertising agency, and that was designed to convince people that dams were needed for flood control, basically. So anyway, bottom line, Dr. Schultz's study showed that, in fact, developers' properties, lots, homes, increase in value when they're near a lake. Obviously, if it's lakefront property, like you've got out at Newport Landing, it increases the value of that property a lot. I think he went out like 1 or 2 miles away from the lake.
Yes.
And found that it even had an increase in property values that far away. Don't even need a view of the lake. Just being relatively close to a lake increases the value of the property. And Dr. Schultz, you know, he's in the real estate department out at UNO. And I have no facts to prove this, but it's, I was told that after he did that study, somebody from, I don't know if it was the NRD or the development community, tried to get him fired. He's still there as far as I know. So this is a pretty devious scheme that's going on here, and most people, you know, people in the public watching this, although I have a feeling after they sat through part of our previous hour-and-a-half discussion, they aren't watching anymore. But if there's anybody watching this, this is why you need to be involved in government. I'm just a citizen that almost accidentally came across this whole issue. A few years ago, I knew nothing about LID as an alternative to dams. In fact, I'm a lifelong fisherman, got a boat, fished a lot of these lakes around here, and 10, 12 years ago, I would have been pushing the dams just for recreation purposes. Now, what happens after the NRD builds these dams? We can see it in the Corps of Engineers dams that have been built in the past, the Standing Bear, the Cunningham, even Warespan Lake, where the NRD's offices sit on the bank of. After a few years of runoff running into these lakes, they get put on the impaired water list because they're polluted with all the runoff. Nothing's done to clean this stormwater as it flows over these farm fields carrying chemicals out of people's yards containing chemicals. This is another advantage of LID. It cleans the water on its way down to the groundwater. As it percolates down through the soil, the water gets clean. But what happens with the lakes is, like I said, after a few years, you've got a nice looking lake, but you probably ought not to eat the fish out of it. There's fish consumption advisories on most of these lakes. So, you know, what's the upside? They're pretty to look at. You can walk around them and meditate, I guess. They cost a heck of a lot of money, and they're actually harming the environment. They're harming the water in the Papio watershed by allowing these chemicals and various pollutants to pass through. I'll stop. There's a lot more I could say, but I have a feeling everybody's kind of anxious to get out here. The only thing I'll say to mainly to the public is if you want to find more out about LID, go to Google and go to Google Images and put in low impact development, and it will bring you up a series of photographs mainly of low impact development features so you can see what they are. Almost every one you click on will have a group, generally somewhere else in the country, because we deny low impact development's existence here. Somewhere else in the country where they're using it, how well it's working. EPA has a lot on low impact development. Over in Iowa, in Glenwood, outside of Glenwood, there's a development called Greenfield. It uses entirely low impact development. And the irony is that was designed by an engineer who now works for the NRD. There's not a pipe, a sewer pipe within that project carrying stormwater. It's all rain gardens, swales, prairie grass, you know, all this stuff that man can do to take the place of what Mother Nature used to do. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Mike.
you, Mr. Ryan.
Sean?
Yep, good morning.
Sean.
Commissioners. This Sean Malotz, 10404 North 132nd Street. I just want to be real short and quick and tell you I appreciate you deferring this until we all have time to visit it. I understand completely where this board has, the need to look towards this road expansion and the potential costs in the future. I'd ask perhaps if the engineer can give you some estimates of what it would cost if you don't go into the interlocal agreement. And I have some other thoughts that I just prefer to speak with the group. So,
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very
we'll
much.
let you guys know for sure when that meeting is set up.
And
we'll get you guys alerted
I
to
am
that.
an affected party
Yes,
of the dams. 3 of the 29 proposed are on our farms, so
Okay.
it's a battle for us, and we appreciate all the help this board has given us.
Okay.
Thank you.
Commissioner Duda?
Thank you.
I would just like to say procedurally, I'm not sure the next step. What I would like to do is work with you, Madam Chair, to find a date, and this will have to be a public meeting that we have, and so we'll have to advertise it and all that, but coordinate with Washington County. And I guess we'll invite whatever members were on our stormwater committee. I don't know if the committee still exists, but any interested parties that served on our committee, we will invite to this open meeting.
Okay.
And we'll try to get that scheduled first opportunity we have.
Perfect.
Thank you.
I do have to just make one comment is that this was not snuck in or tried to be ramrodded through. We actually had a long presentation on this the other day or last week or the week before, and we actually did find out that the county engineers had been working on this for many, many years. So I don't want any of the public to think we were trying to ramrod anything through on this item. The second thing is while I may not agree with everything that the NRD is proposing in their dam site program, I don't think that there's any big conspiracy on the agenda or on the table with this project. I think we've come a long way with working with the NRD and on mutual projects, that they've been very open, and I can speak for, John and, not Perlman, Peterman, Marlin, that they were very professional and very open with their project when they came and presented it at this board. So while I don't always agree with what their agenda is, I think it behooves us to stay professional and stay respectful and at the table for a discussion on these things. So we'll let you know. All right. Next is we have the information back from the assessors, and so what I'm going to ask, because they're back in the room, is that we recess out of Board of Commissioners and go back into Board of Equalization, so at least we can finish that.
Sorry, Madam Chair. So were you going to vote on tabling this?
Oh, we did. Oh, I thought we already did. Okay, sorry.
No, there is a motion, and I don't know who made the second to table it.
I think it was you, wasn't it? Did you second the?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so please vote on tabling item D2 until the first meeting in September 16th.
Motion passes.
Okay. Now I need a motion to recess out of the Board of Commissioners and go back into Board of Equalization.
Second.
Please vote.
One moment, please. Ellen's flying fingers.
Yes.
We're keeping her busy today.
Roger Morrissey, County
Just a
Assessor.
second, we're not there yet. Sorry.
Okay, ready.
Okay.
Roger Morrissey, County Assessor.
Well, actually, we're ready for the vote.
Yes.
Yes.
That was it. Just a minute, Roger.
Commissioner Morgan, motion passes.
Just sit down.
Okay.
Okay, Roger, you're up.
I'm here. Chris and I both looked at the properties. He went upstairs, or I went upstairs, he went downstairs and came out with the same conclusions. I'll be real brief and then let him give more details. You're right, Commissioner Morgan, the property was Info USA, and that was a Turk case. And going back a couple years, we have had negotiated after we sent our numbers to the state with that lower value, we changed our condition on our property record, took into consideration vacancy, and came in with settled at that lower value. So that number was our recommendation, because when we went to Turk we stipulated, the county attorney and the assessor's office worked with the property owner, came up, and that's, here again, we'll keep an eye on that each year, because hopefully we get that back up.
Very good.
The other property was a sale. It's a hotel or motel out on L Street, 107th and L Street. It had sold in 07 for, I forget, $4 million and change. And after looking at that sale, that became our new assessment around that number, and stayed our number. Then the property owner brought some information in to the referee, and I'll let Chris talk to both of those, and I agree with their decision, though, and he'll give you further information on that.
Thank you, Roger.
After getting that.
Chris?
Chris Musto. Select a property. Which one would you like to talk about first?
Info USA.
Okay. Info USA, I believe the best way to do this is just quickly read the comments that we put into our information that is in the online information. This property owner did meet with the county assessor. They were talking about valuation. They had requested a valuation of $1,014,742. The assessor had recommended a $1,014,700. They usually round to the 100, closest 100. The referee comments were assessor's office recommends reduction in value to $1,014,700 based on review of market factors and stipulated agreements for 2012 and 13. A review of assessor provided information did not indicate this to be an unusual valuation. And as a coordinator, after reviewing the information provided as well as assessor information, I support the change in value. We didn't go through a separate analysis. We feel that in the information that was provided, they indicated that they had met, the owner is requested in 2004, they've given us a copy of the stipulation. The assessor's office went through and reanalyzed in their assessment packet, looking at sales, of adjusting the quality of the property down a little bit, vacancy, rents, that sort of thing, and it supported the $1 million, $14,700. Can I answer any questions on that?
How many square feet is that, Chris?
17,000 is what is listed here.
Really? Of land, or?
17,000 total improvement.
Commissioner Boyle?
What's that come out square foot, per square foot, the valuation? I gave you my
Somewhere
sheet, so I don't have that.
Yeah.
$70, maybe, not even that, 65.
I don't have a calculator. Would you like me to get a calculator?
No, 65.
Interesting on this is an office building, but it is also located in a general industrial zoning, which is a little bit different, and it's kind of at the end of a cul-de-sac, and it's got some characteristics that are less common to an office building, maybe located in a general office building development, office park.
Yeah, so that's Okay,
So-
we're good with that, I think.
I don't have that sheet in front of me, I gave it to you, but
Would you like it back?
No, not necessarily. What was the, you started out with a valuation, Info USA asked for just $1,014,700. The assessor said, give them $1,014,700. So I don't understand, was that reduced to something else?
The
Is that-
prior value was $1,988,400.
Okay. Okay.
I think it's right on track. That one's, in my opinion, perfect.
Very good.
That's okay.
Okay, next one.
The next one is the property at 10728 L Street. This protest was filed online, and they provided in their reduction reason, we purchased the property in November 2013 for $2,500,000. And $2,500,000 was what the value was set to it. In the comments to the referee, the property sold in November 2013 for $2,500,000, while no information was submitted by the property owner, being additional, closing statements, whatnot. A review of the 521 transfer statement confirmed what the property owner revealed in the hearing. According to the property owner, the reason for the lower than expected sale price is that only around 60% of the rooms were available for use. The others were in some stage of remodeling. The current owners purchased the property out of bankruptcies. The owners stated that they are in the process of remodeling the rooms that were not available for occupancy. Applying the assessor's model to 60 rooms reveals a value of $2,100,000, which supports the purchase price. We did conclude at the $2,500,000 of the purchase price, and under the comments of coordinator, which I would have put in there, information regarding the recent purchase of the property supports a reduction in value. Property should be revisited next year for an updated assessment. And that's, we're recommending that, although it shows it purchased a month, 6 weeks before the cutoff, you've got some work to be done. I assume they're going to move forward getting those rooms back online, and would like to see that valuation revisited at that point and see how the work's come along, and it may even become, fully operational by the end of the year.
Commissioner Boyle?
Well, my question still really goes to the assessor's office about how did they get that valuation? How did they come to that conclusion to set that valuation? Not what you did, not what the taxpayer commanded, but I mean, how did they arrive at it? And I think largely what this will point out is that there probably needs to be more money spent on the assessor to do some more things that need to be done. That's what I think, and I've always felt that way. And I'm not trying to be nice to Roger after I beat him up, but that's what I've always felt. So how did you come, what was the valuation you assigned to this building?
Yeah, on the hotel,
yeah.
The motel. Give you a little history again. That property sold on March of 2004 for $3,975,000. That property sold again on February 7th, 2007 for $4,600,000. And looking at and there's some other sales in that area. Looking at some other sales, then we arrived at the $4.5 million assessed value, and it stayed that.
Okay, and then eventually it was purchased for $2.5 million.
$2.5 million, but there were only so many rooms in operation, right. And they were remodeled. They left it with construction underway, remodeling underway, and it was a foreclosure. And
did you just look at comparables to arrive at the valuation? I know that you'd like to have more staff to go out and do some things, but is that what happened?
We look at both. We can look at all three approaches. If it's a newer building, we'll use the cost approach.
Okay.
We do look at sales if we've got, some motel sales, and we do. There have been several that have sold. And then we also look at the income approach, too.
I have a question that probably is a little bit
off the wall, but what is the assessor's philosophy on vacant buildings? You know, I mean, is it a building goes vacant, and I'm not talking about the 60 rooms that need to be remodeled. I'm talking about a building that just simply has gone to hell, and maybe it's for sale for 20 years, stands vacant. Do you lower the valuation of that because it's in a state of disrepair, or is your philosophy to raise the valuation so they'll dump it and get rid of it? I mean, how do you know, I've got a building in mind that I know of that's like about $7 a square foot in Caddy Corner in an area that's not very desirable. There's a home there that's about $25 a square foot. Tiny home built in the 1800s that's, you know, 3 or 4 times what this huge building is. And I just can't reconcile what we're charging for that commercial property versus some person's private home. I've never been able to get that together.
We put on the buyer's hat. And what would a buyer pay for it as of January 1st of that year?
Okay.
That becomes the value.
All right.
No other questions
Thanks.
or comments? No other properties?
Chris,
Then
thank you very much.
Do I have a motion to approve item, wait a minute, I?
So moved.
Second?
There wasn't any,
That property, you voted earlier.
Chris has got it.
From the list.
oh, so we're putting it back
This is just for the remainder.
for the remainder of the,
See,
so for everything?
Yeah, I do have one comment. I noticed that on the sheet that Catherine prepared for me, because I didn't know this, John Labai asked for a valuation of $195,700, and we ended up doing it $300. Do you think we're off the beam on that, or do you think we should? I mean, when you consider the neighborhood and what it looked like, should we lower that $300,000 down to something that's closer in the ballpark, maybe $200,000, when you consider what the neighborhood's like? I would make a motion to do that. I think, you know, we always we're supposed to, and when we were doing this ourselves, I remember lots of times in working with the assessor that we looked at the conditions surrounding, the environment surrounding a home. And I remember a home that was on a god-awful busy intersection, wonderful home, and it was really nice inside and all this sort of thing, but it was so darn close to the street that it was miserable. The noise, the congestion, the cars would stop, all the fumes and all that. So it was reduced. And you see that all the time, and I do, on valuations on, you know, there'll be a reduction, say, busy street. You're right on Dodge Street there someplace. So I think that we ought to consider the condition around that building. The building is beautiful. It's going to take a lot of work to get it up to snuff. But I think the neighborhood is so depressed that it affects the value of that property. And I think we should compromise, not give him what he asked for, but drop this to $200,000. I think is reasonable.
I think, Commissioner Boyle, we're going to need to pull that one from the list then, and vote on that one separately. So do you know what do you have the?
I've got the parcel number and the address. The parcel is 0828350002. The address is 2236 St. Mary Avenue.
Commissioner Morgan?
The motion is to change the value to $200,000, and that's going to be considered separately.
Separately.
Commissioner Boyle?
Yes.
What, the assessor had it at what amount again?
The assessor had it at $361,000.
And he requested, the owner, when he was here last
He
week?
requested that it be $195,700, and the Board of Equalization recommended $300,000, which is a drop of 61 from the assessor. But I think it needs to go down further when you really look at the conditions. I mean, I'm very familiar with the area. I drive by there every day, several times, and it is not just a block away. It's so rough, and the buildings nearby are in such poor condition. I just think that the environment demands it. I mean, what's going to happen to that church on the corner? I don't know.
Would you accept a friendly amendment to change it to 220?
Yes.
Okay, and I would second it with that friendly amendment to 220.
No other questions or comments? Commissioner Duda?
Thank you. I like Mr. Leiba very much. He's got a good history with the county from a lot of work he's done down at Heartland Park and everything. And I very much appreciate anybody that buys and restores some of the beautiful old buildings around our community. We have a number of great buildings that are being enhanced and maintained, not with public dollars, and I'm always thrilled when that happens. However, I'm going to stick with our referee's recommendation on here. In my opinion, when we did away with the county board listening to the protests ourselves was when we got overwhelmed with the volume, and we could no longer meet as an entire board. And when we met as a board, we could balance each other out a little bit. That worked. Once the volume overwhelmed us, we split into half. Then we split smaller and smaller and finally had individual commissioners hearing cases, and we were no longer able to be consistent. You had taxpayers coming in and saying, I want that commissioner to hear my case. We even had an instance where I told a taxpayer what the recommendation was going to be. It was a very modest reduction, and another commissioner, unbeknownst to me, came along, took my paperwork, changed the figure, raised their valuation, never even gave me the courtesy of telling me. I told the taxpayer what the recommendation was going to be, and he ended up getting his valuation raised and was quite surprised. The system fell apart when we were no longer able to treat people the same. There has to be some uniformity in process, I believe, and I think we've got a great process now in terms of hiring the very best people we can find within the community. We've really raised the bar on who we have as referees, and I really, why I was not comfortable making the change that came up earlier is the same reason. I want to be consistent and try to back our referees on these properties unless I really have a compelling reason, something that the referees didn't know about, perhaps, that is brought to our attention. Thank you.
Commissioner Boyle?
Well, I understand, but I think this is what you talked about earlier, where all the commissioners were hearing an appeal and making a decision. The thing that bothers me, not only the condition of the area, but the comparables that were used. I'm very familiar with the comparables. One of the homes was an area where I used to be in 7th grade, was a safety patrol kid. It was on the corner. And it's a beautiful home. It's been restored, and it's stunning. And on 38th Street from the cathedral area, those homes have all been restored. They are absolutely terrific, absolutely top. And those were comparables. One of those houses belonged to Dr. Dowell, and his family, I think they just sold it. And I have a brother-in-law and sister-in-law live behind them. And when you sit in their backyard, you see these beautiful mansions with those great big carriage houses and everything else. That's just not the neighborhood. This is an isolated, beautiful mansion sitting among a tough neighborhood. Now, if it was on 38th Street, I wouldn't have a problem with going back to the 361, even more. But I know the Stoner family, Dr. Stoner, had 8 children, and he lived in a house down the street. I mean, it was unbelievable what that neighborhood was like, and it's come back. And Ann lived across the street there, and they lived in a big house with almost 12 kids. I'm familiar with it. This is not the neighborhood. The neighborhood he's in is really difficult, to say the least. I just think this is reasonable. So 220 is really, for now, it'll come up, hopefully. But I think 220 is the right thing. And I think we have the authority and the responsibility to make these decisions.
Commissioner Morgan?
I call for the question, but I just mention one quick thing. The Stores Mansion, which you'd compare to a very nice property up on Farnham, plus good neighborhood, that sold a couple years ago for, I want to say, $320,000. If this property was up there, I wouldn't be supporting my good friend Commissioner Boyle. So I just want to give you the difference of two structures that are similar. So, okay.
Okay, no other questions or comments. There is a motion and a second to set the property at 2236 St. Mary's 0828350002 at $220,000. Please vote. Now we'll go back to the original item I. Is there a motion and a second?
Yes, I'll make a motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Please vote. And adjourn. Oh, damn.
Yes.
Too fast, too fast. We have a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 If I can make a comment, just a personal comment very quickly, I really appreciate the board's willingness to look at these individual cases. I think they're very sensible, and I think we did a lot of good things this morning, so I appreciate the time. It's making sausage and, one of those things. Thanks.
You presented very well today, Commissioner Boyle.
Thank you.
All right, cool. We should do that like on the board so everybody can see all that sausage. We'll go back into, do I have a motion to go back into the Board of Commissioners?
So moved. Second.
Please vote.
I like that voice vote.
I know. The old days.
I know, we have to suspend the rules.
Motion passes.
Passed without you, Commissioner Duda. We'll go back to the consent agenda item I, American Correctional Association contract to re-accreditation of the main jail and the Criminal Justice Center. Commissioner Boyle, you had a question on this one. If you start, I'm going to say it up front though, if he starts getting on his bandwagon about defunding accreditation, I'm going to shut his mic off.
Okay. All right.
Fair warning.
Defunding is not on the table. I mean, I know what the vote would be on that.
Good morning, Commissioners. Mark Foxhall, Director of Corrections.
Let me just be right to the point. I'd like to know how, and you can do this in a future time, how this affiliation has benefited the taxpayers and the employees of the correction facility. I would like to know what the total cost is, the true cost. And that means going into the time that employees have to fill out forms or whatever it is that creates this reporting system. Not just as we had a report some time ago that it was the fellow who made the report, didn't even mention his own salary. So I'd like to know the salaries of all the people that are involved and how many people are really dedicated in making this system work. And I really would like to have a report on just exactly what it's done for us and the taxpayers. And that's it. I'll be voting. I may vote for this, I don't know. But anyhow, I know it's going to get approved, and I don't want to take any more of your time. I don't agree with it, but we'll see what happens.
I can do that. We'll put together a report for you.
Okay.
Did you want to stand up and say anything that we could give you a hard time about?
I would advise not. Decline.
Thank you very much.
Is that a motion to approve?
That is a motion to approve.
Second it.
Please vote.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
You haven't heard the vote yet, so I don't know why you're
No,
saying
yeah.
thank you. There you go.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Good remarks, Mark.
We do have a recognition and a sympathy resolution to the family of Richard Schottker Sr. That I'd like to read into the record. Whereas it was with great sadness that the Douglas County Board of Commissioners learned of the death of the former County Chief Administrative Officer Richard Dick Schottker Sr. on July 25, 2014 at the age of 86. And whereas he is survived by his wife of 64 years, Shirley, sons Richard Jr. and Robert, daughters Mary Ann and Sue, their spouses, 23 grandchildren and great-grandchildren. Whereas Mr. Schottker was born in Burton in 1927 and was raised in Baja County, and whereas later he went on to attend the University of Nebraska, and whereas in 1955 he began his career with Douglas County as the Chief Deputy Treasurer and remained in his position for 2 decades. And whereas in 1967, in addition to his chief deputy treasurer role, Mr. Shocker was appointed to manage the county's data processing center, the predecessor entity to what is now known as the Douglas Omaha Technology Commission. And whereas later in his career, Mr. Shocker was hired as the Chief Administrative Officer of Douglas County, where he remained until his retirement in 1989. And whereas he devoted 35 years to public service, resulting in a tremendous impact on our county, community, and on our residents. And whereas during his years with Douglas County, Mr. Shocker was well known for his assisting in the development of the Central Park East, establishing Greater Omaha Convention and Visitors Bureau, creating pension and health benefit plans for the employees, computerizing local government, and so much more. Now therefore be it resolved by this Board of County Commissioners, Douglas County, Nebraska, that this board hereby commemorates the public service contributions of Richard Dick Shocker Sr. and does hereby formally extend this board's sincerest sympathies to his family and friends. Dated this 5th day of August 2014.
Motion approved.
Second.
Please vote.
While we're voting, may I add one quick comment?
Absolutely.
Regarding Mr. Shocker, I can also tell you as a lifelong Presbyterian that he was very active in the church regionally. I mean, he was very highly regarded within the church, and they had no idea of his public background. He was quite a distinguished person, kind of a Renaissance man.
Really,
Neat.
that's right.
Thank you. And with that, we'll have staff make sure that the family gets the right copy, nice copy.
Are we all going to sign it?
Yes. No, I don't think we.
I don't think we
Do we?
signed
No,
it.
we don't sign those. They just pay, they have the seal. With that, citizen comments. Is there anyone in the chamber wishing to speak during the board about an item not on the agenda? Oh, we are ready.
Here we go
That's
again.
okay.
This is a different item.
Oh, okay. All right. I was going to say.
Mike Ryan again. About a month ago, you had a preliminary zoning change and preliminary plat approval before you on a development done by, proposed to be done by Mr. Kretschy out on the east side of the Elkhorn River on some old, or some property he bought from the Catholic Church. Okay, as a member of the Stormwater Committee, and I talked to Doug Cook about this to see if, he had any information adding to what I saw at that meeting, and he said he didn't. It was obvious to me there weren't any stormwater controls on that property. Doug mentioned something about the street would have no curbs on it, so all the water would flow off the street into the ditch. Well, that really doesn't do anything for the stormwater coming off the roofs and the driveways and, most of those big lots, fancy, ritzy places out there, they have horses and the ground gets trampled down and they usually have a pole barn for the horses. So maybe something will be forthcoming, but I'm telling you, from what I see right now, it doesn't follow our stormwater policies. And I mentioned this earlier, but I think it's good for everybody to look at that Greenfields development over by Glenwood, Iowa, to see what these developments should look like. And it's kind of difficult to find the page that you should look at on the internet. So if anybody wants to look at it, they can email me at stoprunoff@yahoo.com, and I'll send them the link. Any questions?
Thank you, Mike. All right, Commissioner Duda.
A quick response to that. Legitimate concerns. I can't comment on how right or wrong Mike is, but I appreciate him paying attention to these things, and this isn't a public action, but a private one. I would like to personally hear from Doug Cook as to what enhancements the developer is taking in an effort to meet our requests. So I think a follow-up conversation with Doug Cook would be appropriate here.
Patrick, will you make sure that
Here, publicly?
Do you bring him in, or how are we going to talk to him?
Well, he was here a few minutes ago. I mean, I don't think this...
I can go find, you want me to go find him? I mean, he's probably...
Well, I don't
is there a
know
way
that
to
he'd
get
be
the
prepared
community
to answer
services?
today. I'd
Okay.
like him to do a little research
Sure.
and somehow get word back to us on what the developer is doing.
If Patrick could do that, it'd be great if he'd come back, not today, but...
Fine.
Absolutely. It's like next Tuesday?
Yeah,
That
that's
works. Thank you.
You
Good
can just
idea.
put it under presentation, Patrick. Commissioner Kraft?
Yes, and while we're talking about low-impact development, a very simple thing all of us can do in our own yards is if the parkway between the sidewalk and the street were concaved a little bit instead of convexed. I hope I have it correctly. Okay, thank you. Concaved, you could hold thousands of gallons of water from going directly into our storm sewers. It's a very simple thing. I've got a 100-gallon rain barrel, and it just takes seconds to fill it up. We let it go later when it's dry, and we should all participate in this low-impact development. The rain gardens are great. They look good. You can see them on Leavenworth Street where UNMC has been rebuilding buildings. Right. And, just, we all have to do our little bit. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll move on to committees, the first one being the Finance Commissioner.
As presented.
Okay.
Meeting next week.
Yes.
We're having we have scheduled a meeting, I believe, for next week after the board meeting. Some technical things Joe wants to bring to our attention.
Correct.
Thank you.
All right. Next is the Administrative Services. There's one resolution directing the county administrator and county purchasing agent to develop a contract monitoring
Great.
process for future county board's approval.
Motion approved.
Second.
Please vote. Next is the Child and Youth Services. Please note there will not be a Child and Youth Services Standing Committee meeting on Tuesday, August 5th. The next scheduled meeting is Tuesday, September 2nd at 11 a.m. Did you have something on that one?
No, the next community service.
Community Services, Commissioner Kraft?
Yes, there will be a community service meeting directly following, well, not directly, about 15 minutes following when we adjourn after the executive session. We're going to be discussing the cost-benefit proposal to assess the use of alternate daily cover at the landfill. We'll discuss marketing of the landfill. We'll update on stormwater projects and any other business. Thank you.
Next
That'll
is-
be in 9:03.
Next is the Human Resources. The first item is weekly personnel report from Civil Service as presented. Unless there's questions or comments, Commissioner Boyle?
I want to make a comment about criminal justice on item E. I haven't talked to Dr. Foxall, but a couple of years ago, we had a meeting at the correctional facility and really had a lot of good information about some of the things going on and I think it's time that we do that again. I'm not sure how we complied with the open meetings law when we did that.
We published it.
Okay, and people could come, so I would like to do that again. It takes a while, but it'll be a couple of hours discussion. I think mental health and things that we need to work on, this program with the testing for alcohol and so forth. I think those are things we really need to get a lot of information about, and will get us really up to speed on what's going on at corrections. And we'll get a report on accreditation, too.
Yep, there you go.
So I will make those arrangements, and we'll
Okay,
coordinate it
good.
with the chair so it's an appropriate time.
Good. Yeah, it was a good meeting.
Okay.
The other Human Resources item is a weekly CAO report on staff assaults.
Commissioner, we did have one assault at the health center. A CNA was assaulted by a resident, basically punched in the chin, but is okay and is back to work.
Okay. Item 3, the legislative issues. I have none today. There's no need for executive session, and again, no, they said till next week. No litigation or anything, so next week.
Yeah, we're going to hold off till next week.
There's a Community Services Committee meeting today, following this county board meeting in room 903, and Commissioner Boyle?
That's left over.
Oh, okay. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved?
Second.
Oh, you know what, before the first meeting in September that we set that stormwater, the first meeting is actually the 9th,
So we decided to wait.
not the 16th. So we said the first meeting in September, and we just stated the 16th, but really the first meeting is the 9th, so the date was just wrong. So thank you, Commissioner Morgan.
And I am gone that meeting.
Okay.
Let's do.
Yes, please vote.
How soon for the committee?
15 minutes.
15? Good.
Oh, beautiful for spacious sky.